All right. Greetings and welcome to night two of the mock selection committee. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend and podcast co-host Graham Doran. With us on the mock, Dave Oman, Rocco Miller, Matt Browning, and Anthony Valentino. Follow all of them on Twitter or X if you feel so inclined as to call it that. Rocco, I think you're on Blue Sky. I dip in there every once in a blue moon as well. I don't know. It hasn't taken off for me for some reason. I ended up coming back to Twitter, even though I hate it there. But we are going to be seeding the field tonight, as much of it as we can. I don't know if you can read the agenda there behind me, but we are diving straight in with the one seeds. Just like last night, we are going to be quickly introducing each of the teams kind of in this range that we're considering. And then we'll vote, and then we'll introduce, and we'll vote, and we'll vote. And it's Groundhog's Day, but hopefully it'll be a relatively quick Groundhog Day. We're gonna try and get out of here in about 2 to 3 hours tonight, and then we'll be back at 2 Eastern on Sunday to finish whatever seeding we don't get done tonight. Hopefully we'll get most of it done. And then do a little bit of scrubbing and bracketing the field, which is the chaotic part of it. But let's dive right in. Hopefully the one seeds won't take very long because we were unanimous on our top 6, but we're going to go through the process anyway and just talk about some of these teams up top. So we're going to go in alphabetical order. Arizona is first, and Rocco, that will be you. Take us away. Good sir.
Right on. Let's talk about the impressive Wildcats here. Just a two-loss team on the season, and a lot of gold in the bank for Arizona. It started early and often, beating Florida on opening night, going to Birmingham and effectively winning a road game against Alabama, although the team sheet will tell you it was a neutral court. Keep that in mind. They beat UCLA as well in a neutral court game, and then of course the big win at UConn speaks volumes for beating a one seed on the road. They're the only team that could say that in the country except for Wisconsin. So there you go. Houston is another team they beat on the road. That's an incredibly hard place to win. That one is arguably even more impressive if you know the history of Houston playing in that building, and then winning at BYU, winning at UCF, winning at TCU. So 8 of their 10 wins against the field are away from the McKale Center. Just truly, truly impressive stuff from Arizona. And because of all of that, that plays into some of their good home wins. They have 14 wins against Quadrant 1, leading the country. Their 8 wins away from home against the field is also leading the country. So they have a great case to be the number 1 overall seed. They just haven't had the opportunity to play against Michigan or Duke. They're 12-1 away from McKale. And right now they're second, or actually, I think they slipped to 3 in the WAB today. But they're right in there in that 2-3 range for strength of resume as well. And third in the power numbers, just because they have won some closer games in the tougher Big 12 and had some close wins early as well. So that's Arizona.
That is Arizona. Sorry, my Google Chrome is crapping out, but we should be good now. On to Connecticut with Anthony.
All right, the Huskies, 4 resume average right now, actually 4, I believe, right across the board, 8.7 on the predictive side. So the efficiency metrics are not as kind to the Huskies right now, and that's, I think, in large part to playing a lot of lackluster games in the Big East, relatively close. Unfortunately, they've been stymied a little bit with the league being down, and they, at least for a lot of time, in the first half of their Big East slate in particular, played some results, kind of confoundingly close results, and they also have that home loss to Creighton, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you kind of see how up and down the Jays have been. I know they caught lightning in a bottle in that game, but even still, you'd expect UConn to win that. Now, on the other side of this, though, this is a really, really good resume. Let's not get too bogged down in maybe a little bit of the negative. 27-3 overall. They have done a ton of winning, and that's really all we can ask for, even against the league slate being down compared to some of the other teams we're talking about. They lost that game to Arizona that Rocco just mentioned. There were no Terrace Reed in that game, no Braylon Mullins in that game, and I think that can certainly be a factor there. They still that game was at home, but they lost by 4, missing 2 of their best players. It's an interesting team watching them because this team doesn't have the killer instinct that I think we're used to with UConn teams. We're just kind of that one guy, the Kemba, the Shabazz Napier, the Tristan Newton, even the Cam Spencer, who has that swagger to just completely change the tide of a game. I haven't really seen that, but the guard play has been solid throughout with Demery and Solo Ball. This team is really good. Tied for 5th nationally in Quad 1A wins at 5. They're 5-2 in that quadrant. They have some really good wins at Fog Allen. They beat Florida. They beat Illinois, both on neutral courts. Although some will argue that one of those games was at MSG, and that's UConn South. That's a conversation for a separate day. They beat BYU too. I know that win has lost a little bit of luster. Swept Villanova, crushed St. John's at home. They've done pretty much what everybody asked them to do against the slate that they had in front of them.
All right. I've got Duke, and I didn't prepare anywhere near as much as that because there's not a whole lot to say on Duke. Number one in a lot of the metrics, all the predictive metrics, and wins above bubble. They are 28-2 overall, 9 wins against Quad 1A. They beat Michigan on a neutral court. That pretty much felt like the tiebreaker, although we'll see what happens with those teams down the stretch for number 1 overall. They pretty much destroyed the ACC outside of a buzzer beater loss at North Carolina. Not only did they win all their other games, I think only 2 of them were decided by single digits. Even in their 2 losses, they were up by 9 with 7 minutes left and then lost to the last minute. That's concerning for picking your bracket, but that's good for game control and showing how dominant they are. Number 9 nationally in strength of schedule, number 9 in non-conference strength of schedule. So I think the unanimous number 1, I think we're kind of heading that direction. Rocco, back to you for Florida.
Go Florida Gators. All right, so here we go. Florida, 11 quad 1 wins, tied for 3rd in the nation. They've won at Vandy, Georgia, Texas A&M. They beat Miami on a neutral. Unfortunately, none of those teams are in my top 16 right now. And that's one of the things holding Florida away from the number 1 seed right now. Also, they had head-to-head chances against UConn and Arizona. Of course, lost to both. The bottom 2 projected number 1s as we last checked in together. But obviously in Southeastern Conference play, they've been an incredible animal, an uncontrollable animal in the swamp and away from the swamp, eating everything in their path. And they at last checked 7-2 against quad 1 and 2 opponents on the road. Extremely strong road record. 19 meaningful wins. They had the 5 of the 6 losses in non-conference play. The 1 loss, ironically, is to the bubblish of all bubble teams, the Auburn Tigers, in the swamp on a game where, honestly, Florida just played terribly. Nothing against Auburn. They got the win, earned the win that day, but Florida shot, I think, their worst shooting performance, certainly of the SEC season, I think of the entire season. So that's the Gator perspective on that. They are a little light in Quad 1A wins due to the earlier point that none of the big wins were against top 16 teams, so they only have 3 of them. Everybody on the 1 seed line right now has 5 or more. And so those are a couple of the other outliers that keeps Florida penciled in as a 2 seed for now, but we still have to vote.
That we do. Moving on to Houston, that'll be me. The good here, they're 25-5, and they don't have any losses outside of Q1A. They split with a healthy Texas Tech. They won at a healthy BYU. I know both those results don't look as impressive anymore, but they were pretty darn good at the time. They also beat Arkansas by 9 on a neutral court. Actually scored 94 in that game. I didn't know Houston had that in them. And they are top 7 in every metric. The bad is they're not top 4 in any metric. So pretty clearly they should be somewhere in the 5 to 7 range. And we're in agreement that they're in the middle of that range, but we'll get there. Their best wins just don't compare to the other teams in this range. I mean, even full strength Texas Tech. I know they were emerging as a title contender, but even before that, they were looking like maybe a 4 seed heading into the reveal. BYU never really proved all that much at full strength. And Houston's non-conference strength of schedule ranks 115th. That's a little concerning, although I get it because Kelvin was having to break in several freshmen. He knew what he was doing, I think, and I don't know that they'll really get knocked for that. It wasn't too terrible. Dave, you're up for Illinois.
Okay, well, I think Illinois might be a little bit of a surprise this year, just considering the turnover that they had in the roster and all the new faces. They have been a really good team on the road for the most part this year. Big wins at Purdue, at Nebraska, split that series with them, won at Iowa, which, as we saw last night with Michigan in a close game, is not an easy place. They did beat Texas Tech at full strength. What's interesting about them is how do potentially some injuries factor in, if at all. They missed a couple players in the loss to Wisconsin, had a big lead in that game, and then credit Wisconsin with making a bunch of shots down the stretch to pull that one out. They had a big lead at UCLA and then coughed that up. So there are some times where I think they get enamored with their offense and don't commit to playing defense. In the Connecticut loss earlier, Tomislav Isovic had been out for about a week and a half before that with some illness issues and was not at full strength in that game. I'm not sure it would have mattered or not. So my take on Illinois is they're very explosive on offense, as their predictive metrics suggest, and their net. They have had some times where I think they get a little too happy shooting a three-pointer, and if it's not falling at a high rate, they can find themselves in some difficulty. So I'm not sure they're in contention for a 1 seed at this point. I think those couple losses to UCLA and at home to Wisconsin probably took them out of that running. But they are in contention for a 2 seed, and depending on their draw, I think they could be a very dangerous opponent for certain people down the road.
That note on their 3-point shooting is what terrifies me about picking them to even reach the Sweet 16, but that's not what we're talking about here.
And they've also had some issues with Stojakovic missing time too. So
yeah. Let's go. We'll reverse these two just to mix up the voices. Michigan State, we'll go back to Anthony, and then we'll wrap up this area with Dave on Michigan. Anthony.
Sorry, you caught me off guard there. I wasn't ready for my big pivot. I love Michigan State's resume, by the way, because it's one that has developed a little bit over the past couple weeks. It was very, let's say, light about 2.5 weeks ago before they won at Purdue, and they also won in Indiana. But a good resume now, and actually has some depth to it in terms of results to support the metrics, which is nice. Because for a while there, it was definitely tough to justify where they were. Got the resume average up to 6th overall. They're fifth nationally now in WAB or WAB, whichever one you want to pronounce it as. Predictive average is lagging a little bit, closer to 12. Last night, in the late part of that game didn't help. They've had some close games against subpar competition that have really hurt the metrics for them. But they're still 4-4 in Quad 1A, 10-3 away from Breslin. They played a pretty solid non-conference with 63rd in the country. 2-3 against the rest of the top 6 in the Big Ten. I think you can look at that in two different ways. You can say it's not terrible since there's a couple of really, really strong teams in there, but you could also look at it as that's not so great since they should be a really, really strong team in where they are bracket. So the one thing that concerns me a little bit is if you look at 2 of those games, I mean, they played against Michigan and Wisconsin. I mean, three of the halves in those 2 games were really fairly non-competitive for them. And they did not look particularly good. So there's been a little bit of a struggle in some of the higher end Big Ten competition. They were also largely outplayed against Minnesota too at Williams Arena. They made a late surge there to kind of make that closer than it really was. But they've generally been really strong against lesser competition too. I mean, I know I mentioned a few results earlier, but they've also had some ones where they've absolutely pounded teams, and 8 of their 15 are by double digits. So they've been able to handle, for the most part, the middle of the league, which has provided a lot of Q1 and Q2 wins, but maybe not the elite Q1 and wins that we would expect from the Big Ten. It's been a lot of middle of the road for Michigan State. Fun team to watch, though. Jeremy Fears is kind of the new well, he's really fun to watch. He's also the new Grayson Allen. Um, and their front court's great. Cohen Carr is electric watching him play. Very balanced team, scoring wise, pretty stout defensively. Really just solid resume, especially with that win at Mackey. Finally, kind of put the cherry on top for them to get them back in this conversation.
All right, and then back to Dave for Michigan.
Well, at the start of the season, a lot of people thought Michigan would be a Final Four national championship contender, and here we are. And they have lived up to that billing this year. At times, they have just been extremely explosive and almost unbeatable, as we saw in Las Vegas early this year and at other times. I think probably the only surprise this year, really, I mean, they had a close game with Duke. Give credit, Duke's defense down the stretch was just unbelievable in that game. That kind of surprise home loss to Wisconsin. You give the Badgers credit for that, but consistently throughout the year, Michigan has done what it's needed to do. They have won in a variety of ways. They've won a lot on the road. They have a lot of really good wins, and they've just been very consistent with what they do. So they're certainly one of the favorites to reach Indianapolis in the Final Four, and they're right there with Arizona and Duke, as I think, among the three best teams in the country consistently all year.
Forgot to unmute myself. All right. So this is where we vote, but unless there is any objection to this plan, in the interest of saving time and in the interest of full disclosure, we did our ballots in seed list order, and all six of us had Duke, Michigan, Arizona, and Connecticut in that order. If there's no objections, we're just going to put them in as the one seeds. We'll put the other four into holding, and then we'll begin to introduce the next group of 8 teams. This is why I budgeted 1 minute for voting on the one seeds. Does anybody object to that plan? The ayes and silence have it. All right. So I will update that shortly. We will go straight into the next group of teams. Back to Anthony on Alabama.
I was looking forward to this one because Alabama might be one of the more fun teams for me personally to watch. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that as a committee, but just enjoy watching them play because you truly never know which way their games are going to go. And that's part of the reason. Stylistically, they are foot on the gas 100% of the time and foot off the gas defensively for most of the time, it seems. High scoring group, offensive juggernaut, one of the most fun players in the country, and LeBaron Philon to watch. But they have really good guard play outside of him too. Aiden Holloway is really good. Latrell Wrightsell is really good. They're a little bit more thin up front, but Aiden Sherrill has been coming along, and he had a huge game the other night, or a couple weeks ago, I guess, against Arkansas in that double overtime, maybe game of the year candidate when that happened. The big topic of discussion that I think we're probably going to get into at some point is Mr. Charles Bediako and his saga. That is obviously something that Alabama has been in the news for. He played 5 games. They went 2-3 over that stretch. So those games exactly, just so you guys know, remember, win at Auburn by 4, beat A&M by 3 at home, lost at Florida by 23, win versus Missouri by 26, and lost versus Tennessee by 6. So 2-3 overall. His quote unquote best games, if you will, highest scoring and one of his highest rebounding games were a blowout win over Mizzou and the game they lost to Tennessee. So I'm not sure really how much impact he candidly had in those 5 games. I'd love to hear, we'll obviously debate that, whether those results should count or have a giant Barry Bonds asterisk next to them. But that's something that's certainly out there and has been, widely discussed. They've had actually some, a lot of injuries too, or a lot of time missed, I should say. Latrell Wrightsell missed that game against Gonzaga. I think he's missed 6 or 8 games this season. But overall, this is a really good team. They have not shied away from playing tough competition. Played the second toughest schedule nationally. fourth in the non-con. They beat Illinois on a neutral court. They won at They went to MSG and beat St. John's. They won in Knoxville against Tennessee. Really strong team. They haven't really looked particularly outclassed, maybe except for the Florida and Arizona games. Second half versus Georgia the other day wasn't great, but in general, they're in these games. They're very competitive. They're a strong team. They just can't play defense, and that's probably going to be their undoing next month. But that's, I suppose, not for us to decide here tonight.
I feel like that's been Alabama ever since Nate Oates got hired. Is fascinating offense. Are they going to play any defense? Speaking of fascinating offense and sometimes no defense, Rocco, you're up with Gonzaga.
Yeah, before I jump on Gonzaga, I just want to remind everybody that Barry Bonds had two brothers, Ricky Bonds and Bobby Bonds Jr. They both pursued professional baseball careers for a long time, never became Barry. And that's about the size of the asterisk I'm going to put on the Bediako situation. And we'll come back to that later.
Well done.
But I will say this, Gonzaga Bulldogs are 28-3 with the WCC debut coming Monday night against probably Dons or Beavers. Portland Pilots are still a possibility. Keep that in mind as they take the court tonight. They're on the same side of the bracket. Obviously, that's one of the big stories here is Gonzaga's super shocking only loss, second. They did have a second loss on the last day to St. Mary's, but their main loss was at Portland. An absolute stunner. Maybe the shocker in WCC history in Gonzaga's final season. But outside of that, this team was mostly strong throughout the non-conference. Some of the non-conference, you can't blame them for. Well, I'll start with the highlights. Beating Alabama, of course, dominating Kentucky. That has destroyed Kentucky in an embarrassing game for the Wildcats. And taking care of UCLA has aged actually pretty well here late. But they had other games. They had Creighton, they had Oklahoma, they had Arizona State on the road. And going into the season, it looked like a loaded schedule. They also got dealt Maryland in the Players Era tournament, which did them no favors because if you're Gonzaga coming from the WCC, you need those games to mean a lot. And a lot of those fell flat. And then they had a game against Oregon in Seattle before Christmas. That, of course, this is the worst Dana Altman year ever at Oregon. So just a lot of those things that became unfortunate. But I do think when they played ASU, Creighton, Oklahoma, those teams had high hopes and full strength teams and somewhat more meaningful than beating those teams now, in my opinion. Maybe not Arizona State, but the others. And then, of course, you look at the overall body of work. They won at Santa Clara, which matters this year. They're 6-2 in quad one, 19-3 in the meaningful games, top 16 across the board in all the measurements. Obviously, typical Gonzaga year, stronger in the power numbers, averaging to a 9 right now, or at last check for me. 13-3 away from the kennel, very strong. So I think they've done enough to win some comparisons, especially if they drift down towards the Alabama part of the seed list. They certainly start winning those comparisons. And they're there to be taken as a high-end 3 seed if, the Kansas, the Texas Techs, the Purdue's, the Nebraskas fall. It's pretty easy to take these Bulldogs above them, in my view.
Yeah, it got easier to take Gonzaga as a 3 when all of those teams lost on Tuesday and Wednesday. Graham, you're up. Let's hear from the one, the only Graham Doran on his favorite Iowa State Cyclones.
Let's talk about the Iowa State Cyclones. Got the season off well. They went to the Players Era in Vegas, went 3-0. Unfortunately for them, they didn't get the money game. They got Syracuse in that third game because of point differential. So they never even got into the top 4. They did go 4-4 against Quad 1A so far this year, 14-6 against the first 2 quadrants. You can see from their power numbers there. Really good net at 10. Predictive averages come in at 8.7. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting for them. I think they're what we would call in Goodfellas a made man because they're untouchable with the committee. What did they do? They went to Purdue in non-conference play, won in West Lafayette by 23. That's the sort of result that the selection committee doesn't forget. I think it's carried Iowa State's reputation this entire season. People still think of Iowa State as really strong, even though in Big 12 play, they've struggled. Against teams in the Big 12 that have at least 8 conference wins, they're 4-6. They have a losing record against teams in the Big 12 that have at least 8 conference wins. Their home loss to Texas Tech was without JT Toppin. That was not the fully healthy Texas Tech that went into Ames and won. They've only gotten 1 game scheduled. On their Big 12 schedule, they only got 1 game against Arizona, 1 game against Houston, 1 game against Texas Tech, 1 game against UCF, 1 game against BYU, 1 game against West Virginia, 1 game against TCU, and 1 game against Cincinnati. They got one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12. According to the net strength of schedule, it's the second easiest Big 12 schedule that anybody has played in the league. Despite this, they're in 5th place, 11-6. They are unlikely to get one of the double byes in the Big 12 tournament. They're the only team of the Big 12's Big 5 to have more out-of-conference WAB than in-conference WAB. That's how much they've struggled. That BYU team that hasn't beaten anybody since Richie Saunders went down actually did beat one team, Iowa State Cyclones. So I think they're a made man because of what they did against Purdue in non-conference play, but their Big 12 performance has not been strong.
All right, we'll keep it in the Big 12 for a minute, pitching it over to new guy, Matt Browning, on the Kansas Jayhawks.
One of the most Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde teams in college basketball, if not the most Jekyll and Hyde team in college basketball. The Jayhawks have not great metrics for a top 3 seed, I would say. The resume average is 13. Predictives are 18. What saves the Jayhawks and what puts them in this conversation is the 6 quad 1A victories. Right? They beat Arizona, Iowa State, Houston at home, 1 at Texas Tech. They beat Tennessee on a neutral. They're 8-8 overall versus quad 1. Some of the blemishes is the overall losses. They have 9, and especially the quad 2 loss to Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. They have lost to Arizona State, lost at West Virginia, should have lost to TCU at home. A very polarizing team, and obviously the whole Darren Pearson saga has been on the forefront of the storylines for Kansas. Their non-conference strength of schedule, they did well, like always, 5th nationally according to the net. They also beat Missouri. And they beat, like I said, Tennessee. They beat NC State, rather, at NC State on the resume. So a team that sometimes can't get out of its own way and it's had chances to perhaps assert itself higher in the seed list. But losses like Arizona State on Tuesday, where they're down 20 in the first half, have not done Kansas any favors. And ultimately will probably cost them a top 3 seed when we get to our voting.
All right, where are we at? Back to Graham on the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Yeah, Nebraska's an interesting team. Weak non-conference schedule, I think that stands out, but it is noted that a few of the teams they did schedule were expected to be a little bit better than they were. You know, of course, teams like New Mexico, pretty good. Teams like Oklahoma and Kansas State did not show up in the way that Nebraska thought they would. Not to say they tried to schedule that strong in the first place, but they did have some games in there that they thought were going to be pretty competitive for them. They have the at Illinois win. Michigan State is fantastic. Unbeaten out of conference. They almost won in Ann Arbor. That was without Mast and Frager. They were 20-0 going into that game. Of course, we just talked about the out-of-conference strength of schedule in the 300s. They only have 2 wins versus teams in the net top 30. That stands out. They dropped all 4 games they've played against net top 30 teams after January 2nd. So you can go back and we talk about how great it is that they beat those teams, Illinois, Michigan State, haven't done it since January 2nd against a top 30 net team. So when I look at Nebraska, I look at a really good record that stands out, and I look at a couple of really good wins. But after that, it starts to get a little bit light in the quality win category.
Sticking in the Big Ten. Every time we pitch it to Matt, we're just staying in a conference. But we're moving to the Purdue Boilermakers. What do you got for us?
Purdue, overall, pretty solid resume. They have all their losses came in quad 1A, but they also have 5 wins there, including at Alabama, neutral floor win over Texas Tech, and 1 at Nebraska. They're kind of weird, though, because they have 4 home losses this year, which is unheard of for a Purdue team losing that many games at Mackey. But they lost, especially as Graham said earlier, the blowout loss to Iowa State, lost by double figures to Michigan at home. So the 4 home losses is a very interesting nugget to the resume. Their metrics are really solid. Resume average of 12.7, predictive 7.7, 8-7 versus quad 1 total. But like I said, all 7 of their losses came in quad one, non-conference SOS at 32, so they have a really nice resume out of the Big Ten play. As I said, at Alabama, neutral Texas Tech. They also beat Auburn on a neutral floor as well. So a good resume. Is it top 2 seed good? I don't know about that, but certainly it's a solid top 12 resume of the field.
Yeah. We'll switch up these last two again. I'll give you a breath, and we'll bring it back to you on Texas Tech after I touch on Virginia here. 26-4 overall, which looks great. 4-1 against Quad 1A, which looks great. 12th or better in all the results-based metrics, which also looks great. They're 205th in non-conference strength of schedule, which does not look great, although I think they get a little bit of a mulligan there just because, coaching change. They were kind of a mess last year, but you should definitely schedule better than that as any major conference team worth its salt. The problem with their 4-1 Quad 1A record is the one loss, they got destroyed by Duke, and the only win that looks particularly good, as far as the metrics are concerned, was at Louisville. And the Cardinals did not have Michael Brown Jr. or Ruths. They were down 2 starters in that game. Virginia they went 0-2 against Duke and North Carolina, which is sometimes all that really matters when it comes to the ACC. They also didn't play Clemson because the ACC is stupid and decided to go that route with its schedule. So they didn't get any great wins if you kind of discount the Louisville one. All right, back to Texas Tech and Matt Browning.
Yeah, so when we did our top 16 reveal mock a couple weeks ago, I was the only person on this committee that did not think too highly of Texas Tech. That was right after the JT Toppin loss. I will eat my words. I'm fully okay with that because they've been outside losing to TCU on Tuesday. Very impressive without JT Toppin. I'll get to that in just a moment. Metrics are really good. 12-7 resume, 14 predictive. They are 4-4 Quad 1A with the biggest one beating Duke on neutral. That was with JT Toppin, obviously, but they also won at Arizona, beat Houston at home. And then recently without Toppin, they won at Iowa State. 8-7 versus Quad 1. The Quad 2 loss, it's hard to really – Toppin got hurt in the middle of the Arizona State game, so it's hard to know what would happen if he would stayed healthy, but that is their Quad 2 loss at that point. Non-conference SOS of 9. So it will be interesting how the committee and ultimately, I guess, us as well, assess the Red Raiders without JT Toppin because you have the Iowa State win that looks really good without him. Then you have the TCU home loss, which is also kind of suspect. So it'll be interesting to see how so many people view Texas Tech, whether they're 4-3. I don't know. It just depends how you view the Red Raiders moving forward.
All right. That is all the introductions on our consensus top 16 overall. With these 8 teams, we will soon be voting, and the top 4 from this will then join I think it's Florida, Houston, Illinois, and Michigan State. And then that will be a vote on the 2 seeds. But we are now opening the floor to any comments, questions, attacks on any of these 8 teams that you feel like talking about.
I was going to follow up on Texas Tech real quick. I think it's will be interesting because it truly is a case of confirmation bias. I think for the committee at the end of the day, it's confirming that this team is good enough without him or confirming that this team is not. And I don't know if I think the 4 results we have now are confirming that they'll be okay without him, but I think that's probably going to change. I know we're not projecting forward, but we'll see. I think it's the reason I mention all that is I think the human nature of it all will be very fascinating, specifically with with TTU's case. And how subconsciously the committee evaluates that. And clearly they probably have some preconceived notions about where they think Texas Tech is headed, losing that caliber of player. And it will be, hard to potentially overcome some of those, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think to follow up on that, it presents an interesting scenario. I just talked about how poor Iowa State is doing in Big 12 play compared to what they did in the non-conference portion of the schedule. Is it possible that maybe Iowa State's just really struggling right now and that win has part to do with just Iowa State struggling, because I think that door is now cracked open because of the TCU home loss. If Texas Tech goes to BYU and loses, I don't think the committee would think that big of a deal of it. If they go to BYU and lose to a Richie Saunders-less BYU after losing at home to TCU, now I think that doubt creeps into your mind that maybe this has more to do with Iowa State struggling than Texas Tech really being as good as we think they are without JT Toppin.
It is kind of wild how much of every Big 12 resume is, well, did they have JT Toppin when they beat them? Did they have Richie Saunders? Was Darren Peterson playing? Did that help Kansas or hurt Kansas? Like, I've never seen so much like roster availability issues as we're seeing this year with the Big 12. But it is,
or are we
I-
overthinking it?
yeah.
Are we
I mean, I do think
are we
with,
overthinking how much they're going to put stock in some of those things? That's the hard part. I think the committee has been relatively inconsistent, at least what they've showed us of how they evaluate those things. So it's, I've thought about that. I've almost wondered if maybe we're overhyping some of this. That Toppin is obviously tough to evaluate because he's such a great player. But I think Rocco alluded to it last time. I mean, the Kenyon Martin injury, which I believe happened, I think it may have happened in the conference tournament. I can't remember. It was that long ago. I mean, they only docked
Basically their
him
last game. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
they only
basically their
docked him
last game.
one C line, right? They docked him. They went to a 2 instead of a 1. Is that correct?
But that's a huge difference. But
Well,
yes,
a huge difference in that
it's a
because
bigger difference than 3 to 4 for sure.
Sure, they were unbelievable that year.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they really
It'd
wanted
be
to,
like it'd be like putting Duke to a 2 seed right now. It was basically the same thing.
okay.
That's
Yeah, you're
just
right.
that'd be hard to imagine, right? I mean, that's a little different. But you're not wrong. And I think the fact that they totally obliterated Iowa State in Hilton, it's the only game Iowa State's lost at Hilton. And they did it with 7 guys. Luke Bomboye is the big key to this puzzle going forward on the floor. He goes 6 for 7 in that game. It's the best offense he had shown, arguably all season. Maybe that's Iowa State's got a soft spot in their rim protection, but Texas Tech's still got a great team in my opinion. Like I think Lawan Watts has been amazing. Same with Jalen Petty. We know Christian Anderson is a superstar. They have 2 head coaches on their bench. Like I think Texas Tech's going to be fine. I'm surprised they lost at home to TCU, but maybe they got, as Dave says, fat and happy after the Iowa State win. And so I think it's still kind of to be determined. Yes, the committee can use the TCU example against them to punish them if they want. And they already confirmed on the preview that they docked them a seed line because of Toppin. So we already know that's where they were on February 19th or whatever. So yeah, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of these elite Big 12 teams, whether it's Kansas, BYU fell off, but Kansas and even Houston's had some struggles lately. They've all just kind of cannibalized each other. They've gotten good wins against, even Iowa State's got a couple wins in there. So um, I think at the end of the day, Anthony, you're right. Like you just have to give them credit for what they deserve at a certain level. And if you want to go from a 3 to a 4, I think we can all live with that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, it was interesting when they did say, to Rocco's point, when they dropped them that seed line, that they were number 13. So the question, what we don't know is,
Yeah,
were they
right.
number 11 dropping to 13?
Or 9.
Or were they like number 9, almost a
Right.
2 seed before they went to Iowa State and dropped them?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we don't know the inside of that, but if it was on the upper end, it tells you that they really, I mean, there was a period, and I don't remember off the top of my head, I may get this wrong, but at one time they had 4 top 15 wins or top 10, one of the two. Anyway, it was very, very impressive. Not very many teams have that, even at the top. So, yeah, how it's going to play out, I think that's going to be one of the toughest things that anybody who's not in that committee room is probably not going to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Arizona and Texas Tech are the only 2 teams in the country with 4 wins against the top 10 in the net.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my big thing is like as long as they stay in the top 16, I think they've absolutely earned that no matter if they lose tomorrow or not. That's my big thing with them. If you put them on between a 3 or 4, I'm prepared to live with that. I think anything be outside of a protected seed would be really, really harsh, especially with all these great wins and one of them being without Toppin.
I think something else to consider is who's going to be above them. Right, we've had this conversation before about there's a clear delineation between the top, 14, 15, or 16 teams. Who's going to jump Texas Tech? Because as we've seen, these teams in that middling range of the seed list keep losing, including Texas Tech. But like,
They haven't
who's
lost
going
that much.
to?
Yeah,
Correct.
they haven't lost
Yeah, exactly.
compared to that next group. Yeah,
Where I think Texas Tech starts to struggle for me is if I really think this BYU game's huge for them, because if they lose it, all of a sudden they're 12-9 with 4 really great wins, but a major injury concern. And you start to look at some of those other teams that they're competing with, and you're like, that's a lot of Q1 and Q2 wins compared to Texas Tech. And now Texas Tech has 9 losses. I think that starts to get concerning for a 3 seed, not for a 4 seed, but for a 3 seed.
I do think one team that tentatively could jump Texas Tech, and it's because of this head-to-head result on a neutral court. I think Arkansas is probably certainly now that we know that Caleb Wilson is out for North Carolina, Arkansas is probably the next team after this that we don't have in consideration. So if Texas Tech does end up at like 16, Arkansas 17, that's going to be something we scrub later on down the line potentially. But to the Kenyon Martin point earlier, I don't think this isn't that. Like, we've seen now 5-6 games of Texas Tech without Toppin. We've seen 5-6 games of North Carolina without Caleb Wilson. Now we assumed he was going to be back, but they played pretty well without him. Granted, not against. I'll get into Carolina later. That's one of my teams. But and same with like Richie Saunders and BYU. Like, I think we've seen enough of these teams now that we can evaluate them as what they are. And yeah, the great wins outside of the Iowa State one, which to Graham's point may say more about Iowa State than Texas Tech's ceiling without Toppin. All those great wins did come at full strength, which is the only reason I could see them dropping out of the top 16 if you really dock them for that. But if they were going to get docked for that, they would have already been docked for that in the top 16 reveal.
I mean, one thing that I thought immediately when that top 16 reveal happened is the committee came out and said, because of the JT Toppin injury, we scrubbed him down. They also lost to Arizona State. Like, that's the part that I also think is missing here. There was a loss in conjunction with that. So that part had been not factored in when they initially voted. So they may have been 8 on the initial vote, but they still lost to Arizona State. Even if JT Toppin wasn't injured, they're probably going to move him a little bit for that anyways.
Yeah, they were down by, I think, 6 when he got hurt. So they were trending towards a loss. Could have changed, but they didn't play well that night in general. And he played about 3/4 of the game. So
yep. Yeah, I think, where did we even land on the Red Rare? We had him at like 15, I think, 14 or 15.
yeah, so I remember even at 13, I was like, okay, they're actually a little higher than I had them. And then they came out and said they docked them from there. So it was like, wow, there was a big difference there.
Any other teams here?
That just speaks to, does this committee really value the high-end wins?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, Dave. And they talked about the top 3 wins, right? That was very important to this committee. What did Texas Tech have at that time? They didn't have Iowa State, but at Arizona, Duke.
They had the Duke. I think the Duke thing always impresses the committee. I mean, it's just that name. They drink, eat, sleep, and whatever else you can do, Duke in Indianapolis.
I hope they don't sleep in Duke.
Yeah. Well, they have
when you poop the bed.
They have glorious dreams about Duke, and then they wake up and talk about Duke.
Do you actually think that they were like fixated on top 3 wins, or they just handed Keith Gill like, here are your spark notes when you're asked about a specific team?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Keith a couple times during the summer. We had him on one of the interviews, and I think he's just super dialed in, man. Like, he knows his stuff. He was, I would say, in the last decade, the most impressive chairman on any of the shows. We'll see if he can come through again on Selection Sunday. I think he will. I think he's really into it. Like, he just loves it. I think he doesn't even care about his own league compared to this stuff. Look at their tournament. I mean, it's just insane. But maybe he loves the attention. I don't know, because they do get 7 days of coverage with their format. Like, we have to tweet about every game.
You love it. Come on.
I do, but it's just like, I would love it if they had 2 dominant teams that like earned all those buys. But this league has like 7 very even teams, and 5 of them get screwed. So it's pretty
It
incredible.
would have been this would have been really good for the App State JMU year of the Sun Belt.
Right. Yeah, that's when I think they came up with it, actually. They thought it was going to be that way for years to come, which was not very
They thought they were going to have a Gonzaga and St. Mary's situation, huh?
Yeah, well, with the WCC, it makes perfect sense. Like, why expose those teams to quad 4 games? It doesn't help them.
On the Gonzaga note, before we voted, I did want to go back and talk about them. To the top 3 win point, I actually think the Kentucky-Florida game could be a little important to Gonzaga's resume. If Kentucky beats Florida, I think Kentucky moves into that top 5 seed range potentially. Not saying they'd get there, but they'd certainly be in the conversation. That looks a whole lot better if they add Kentucky as potentially a top win in addition to Alabama.
Yeah, good point.
I'll go to Purdue real quick because I've been struggling with them, and I don't know how much of it is just recency bias. I think it's mostly that. I think it's mostly what Matt brought up of the 4 home losses. I think it's the fact that I feel like every time I'm looking at a Big Ten resume, it has a win over Purdue on it. And I'm like, is Purdue actually any good, or what is going on here? But everything looks great. Like I didn't update these wins above bubble numbers. Maybe now they're behind Alabama. This is from yesterday, but they have the best WAB in this group. All of their metrics say they should be, at worst, a high 3 seed. I think they're still in the mix for a 2, even though, we didn't have them there on our consensus list, but I think they could be an interesting team, depending on how they perform in the Big Ten tournament, especially since we're probably going to have Michigan State and Illinois in that 7 and 8 range. Like it could just be those 3 spots, and the committee could very easily, they talk about having contingency brackets. I don't believe how much they do, but it is very easy to just swap 2 Big Ten teams and not worry about much else.
With the black and gold, they remind me of the Big Ten's souped up version of Vanderbilt, where I just don't believe them when they play teams that they should be able to beat if they're really that caliber. Why aren't you beating these teams at Mackey consistently? And they almost have lost some games on the road, and even at home, they almost lost at home to Oregon. When I look at Purdue, when I watch them, I don't see a top 10 team personally. I see like a 12 to 15 team. That's the kind of team I see. And I don't really believe the metrics. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they're a top 2 seed when I watch them.
I don't understand how they're the second best offense on KenPom. That makes no sense to me. But I do have a hot take conspiracy theory. Not really conspiracy, but I think Braden Smith's just going for that record, and he doesn't really care about getting his own points until it's late in the game and it's close. Like, he literally took 3 shots in the first 30 minutes the other night. Will he change his game once the tournament starts, once he breaks the record? It's kind of weird.
Probably. Yeah, I just think at this point, all we know of Purdue is that they have an extremely high floor. Like, when they play the majority of the Big Ten that are not the elites, they're clearly the best team on the floor. You saw it in last year's tournament too, when McNeese pulled off the upset. You just saw like McNeese has no chance against this team. Purdue's just way more organized, way more skilled. It's a different team this year, but not by a lot. And I think you're seeing that when Purdue plays lesser teams. And Nebraska has flaws, and they were able to get by Nebraska, but that's their only top 16 win. And they've been clearly outclassed when they played the Michigan, and they played Iowa State at Iowa State's peak, but clearly got undressed in that matchup. Michigan State was slightly better throughout the game, even though it was at Mackey. And so I think that's what you're seeing is a team with a very high floor, but not knowing how to go toe to toe with the elites. Or maybe just not having enough talent to go toe to toe with the elites, quite frankly.
I wanted to chime in on Nebraska real fast. I've been a little lower on them than most, and some of their fans have kind of made me feel bad on Twitter, I guess you can say. But the non-conference strength of schedule jumps out to me. I get asked, well, what about Iowa State? My pushback is, okay, well, Iowa State beat Purdue at Purdue. They beat St. John's on a neutral. Yeah, Nebraska might have tried with Oklahoma and Kansas State, and they beat New Mexico neutral. But they've only played one quad 1 game outside of one quad 1 game in non-conference. Everything else was in league play. And I just have a hard time thinking that resume, I kind of feel about Nebraska how Graham feels about Purdue. I don't see it, especially when you have the resume that goes with it. I know the metrics are good, but I can't get fully behind a team that did not do much outside of Big Ten play. In the quad one, that is.
Sticking on Nebraska, is anybody willing to join me in admitting that there is an element every time you evaluate Nebraska's resume of it's Nebraska? I mean, I've talked about that on our Big Ten pods before. Like, it's a fun to watch team, but I also know they've never won a tournament game, and I feel like they're kind of the inverse of the Duke, the Kansas, Kentucky, where you expect when they're winning, you expect it to continue. And with Nebraska, there's almost an element of they need to prove it, and I feel like lately they haven't been. I think I was all in on Nebraska as a 1 seed when they were whatever 20-0, and they
Right.
haven't been that same team over the last month and a half. And I think we're all a little, whether we realize it, whether we'll admit it or not, we're a little eager to just ding Nebraska for being Nebraska.
I mean, we say that, but then just look at the wins in comparison, right? Look at those third best wins for the other teams at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, at St. John's. Theirs is at Ohio State. We barely put Ohio State in the field last night. Like, that 2 wins against the net top 30 is truly a shocking number for a team competing for a 3 seed. You just don't see that like any year, let alone this year. Like, you never see that. It's just that they've been really good about not dropping games to teams that they're clearly better than.
Yeah, I think a big part of the issue, Graham, is the super conference effect. These unbalanced schedules are not good for any of our health. And Nebraska, of course, being a projected bottom half team by the schedule makers of the Big Ten, the only decent team they're playing twice is Iowa. They're only getting Purdue once, Michigan once, and so they're getting 3 teams from the bottom half besides Iowa a pair of times, and so that you're seeing that in the Big 12 as well. When you look at UCF, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, those schedules they're only playing the Elite Six one time. It's a whole different degree of difficulty than it is for the teams at the top that want the loaded schedule. Whereas if we had the old Big Ten, we would know a lot more about Nebraska by now, good or bad. And so that's a big problem, and it's something we have to deal with in all the sports now. It's huge in football, where like half the league doesn't play each other. Even in baseball, they don't even have series against each other. So it's just welcome to college sports in 2026. But the Illinois game too, that's where, I watched that whole game. It was early in the season, one of the first Big Ten games, and they get up 16 in the first half, playing lights out. And that's when it's like, wow, these guys are awesome. And then the second half, Illinois pretty much took over the game. If that game goes 2 more minutes, Illinois wins. Nebraska hits a huge 3 with about, I don't know, 10 seconds left to win by 3. It was a tie game. Credit to the Cornhuskers. They got the big shot late, but again, I think over the course of a series, Illinois probably dominates the series if it was the NBA. You saw in Nebraska, Illinois was clearly the better team when I totally misspoke because they did play them twice. But yeah, so if you pretend Illinois swept them, how good is this Nebraska resume really? And that's where I get a little stuck.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that was
the other
like
thing,
their 7-day stretch where they were gods. Like, they beat Creighton by 30, they beat Wisconsin by 30, and then they won at Illinois, and they've haven't done a whole lot since then.
Well,
well,
teams are game planning them much better now to take away a lot of their pace and space and making them beat them with their second, third options. So it's a little bit different now.
Yeah,
what
the only
really
thing I would
bothers me,
say
sorry,
it's been brought up is, if they get along one of those cut lines and they're that 3-4 line, whatever the case is, does that non-conference schedule strength and the lack of success outside the league end up costing them a seed line or two, not a seed line or two, but a spot or two on the seed list, which could cost them a seed line. We don't know, but that is one thing when you're start looking at these teams. Well, what did you do in your league, and then what did you do outside your league? Because there's 2 parts of the season, and again, not all of their fault, but they just don't have a lot to show from outside the Big Ten.
Well, especially too, because now the efficiency metrics have sagged a little bit. If they get towards the back end of that 3 line, let's say they're, 12th, it's a very easy thing to ding them for. If they're a little higher up, it's hard to imagine they ding them 3 spots on the seed list to do that. But, if they're at 11 or 12 and you're looking at it and people are pretty close, especially as their wins haven't, or they have aged okay. I guess the more thing is, as other people around them have added better wins in comparison, it's just such an easy thing to pick out and be like, well, we're going to slide them back to the 4 line. That's where I would worry about it most for the Huskers. And I just wanted to follow up on one point that Graham mentioned. And this isn't anything scientific in particular, but this is on Purdue. Purdue is one of those teams where every time, especially with how they've looked recently, and we talked about this ad nauseum, I want to drop them further. I'm like, they have to be lower on the seed list. And then I look at their wins and the everything. I have a really hard time getting Purdue to their lowest metric or even below that with the wins. I just think it's so difficult to look at their overall profile and say, man, I know you lost the games at home. That is unusual for Purdue. That's unusual for Mackey. That's unusual for a lot of different reasons. But I mean, you did win a lot of really good games and played a super hard schedule, and the metrics say you're pretty good. I know what my eyes are telling me, at least more recently, but I don't know. I just really, they are the team the last few weeks I've struggled so much with. I'm like, I feel like they should be lower, but I can't get them there.
I mean, one thing that does help from a resume metric perspective for them is they were 8-0 against quad 3. Kind of to Rocco's point earlier, they tend to beat up on those teams that they really should beat. And I think that's showing up not just in the predictive metrics, it's showing up in the resume metrics. But I am very bothered by the fact that they got 4 opportunities at home to beat net top 10 teams and usually weren't competitive in them. I really, really struggle with that point. I feel like they're telling me exactly what they are. They're just not the 10th best team in the country, but they're right there. They are right at that line of top 10, and they're not top 10. Maybe they're 10th overall, but they are not 9th.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue's just fundamentally sound, but they don't have the athleticism as some of these top dogs in the country. I think that's what we've learned. They can just get physically outclassed, and not much you can do. I mean, the top of the sport is a whole different level, unfortunately, because I don't think we're going to get as many upsets as we want. But but Purdue is just so well coached too. Like, they're just not going to slip up against teams less than them. So it's an interesting puzzle. And as for Nebraska, I just think the road win at Illinois is so valuable at the top, especially with the way the committee shared their thoughts. It's really hard to just, with them at the very top, with that win at the very top like that, plus a rock fight, a 2-point win over Michigan State. It's tough to take teams trying to pass Nebraska and just do it, because almost all of them don't have a win as good as at Illinois.
I can't decide if Boise State, what the hell am I even talking about? If Iowa State is dragging down Purdue, or if Purdue is buoying, that's what I was going to say, not Boise, buoying Iowa State's resume. But I feel like no matter what, they're handcuffed together. Like, Iowa State 9, Purdue 10. Maybe it's Iowa State 14, Purdue 15. Just because, to Graham's point, that was like enough. The one result that mattered for Iowa State's resume. I feel like they're just kind of stuck together.
Yeah, road wins will do that. I mean, road wins move mountains, right? So,
all right, we thinking we want to do this vote here? Get moving.
Yep. Bradley Braves looking good, up 6 with a minute to go. For you Arch Madness lovers, and VCU up 4.
VCU just won.
They got the win.
Well, my streaming is extremely slow because I didn't mean to ruin it. A minute left.
I didn't mean to ruin it for you, Rocco.
No, that's cool. I appreciate it. I can get excited for Miami, Ohio now.
68-62. There you go. That's the final. That's a big. I mean, that's a big win. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty
jump into
solid
the. into the Google sheet. If you need me to send it to you again, let me know, but it should be in
VCU
your emails.
VCU very smart to win close because it keeps Dayton probably in quad one.
Yep. And it keeps their
As stupid as that is, I don't
previous
think it really matters. It's just
their previous home win
optics.
over Dayton will stay in quad 2 as well.
There you go. There you go.
We need Anthony and Rocco in the voting sheet.
Oh.
I mean, take your time actually filling out the votes, but you should probably have the
I'm in
tab
there.
open.
I'm in there.
Where is the voting?
Are you?
I'm
Oh,
gonna
there's Rocco.
refresh it. Yeah.
Oh, is it from the one from the other night? Same link?
Yeah, it's the same
Got it.
same
Okay.
sheet.
Are we doing the vote that starts with Alabama?
Yes. So
Okay.
it'll be these 8, and then the top 4 will join Florida, Houston, Illinois, Michigan State, and then we'll do a couple of quick rounds of votes to at least get the 2 seeds and hopefully the 3s. We can talk about whether we want to incorporate North Carolina, Arkansas, Tennessee, or anyone in that range.
I got a bone to pick with the mock committee here. I saw a lot of shit talk in Purdue here, and I see a lot of 2s next to their name.
Well, they're handcuffed to Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, what it really comes down to for me is I don't think Kansas has done enough. I don't think Alabama's done enough. That's it, right? I just don't have somebody to replace them with. But I feel very confident they don't deserve a top 2 seed. I just can't find anybody to go higher.
I feel like that's going to be a theme for the rest of the evening is who else can I possibly move to bypass this team? Because it just doesn't seem like it's possible. So they end up there by default.
I said this, I think the other day, just to Graham, but when I was getting all of our seed lists in, I was like, wow, we're really close together on these top 16 teams. I was like, well, yeah, we got the answers 10 days ago. It gets a little more interesting after these first couple rounds of voting. It's a little more diverse.
Yes, I would think so.
Valparaiso just buried 2 threes. We have a tie game. This is crazy.
March Madness, baby.
It's the best.
Poor Belmont. RIP.
It's all downhill after Arch Madness. It's the peak of championship week.
I don't know if it'll hold, but West Virginia's
up pretty big, right?
Up 9.5 on UCF. Just started the second half.
It's pretty good.
Lest we forget that West Virginia also swept Cincinnati.
Yeah, they did. With Jizzle James in both games, I might add. For you Jizzle James lovers.
Love the Jizzle. Rocco, I think we're just waiting on your votes here.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just pulling up my. I'll have it in there in a second here.
All right.
Too many games ending right now. It's very dramatic hour fair. Right now.
How many screens you got up in front of you there, Rocco? 10, 12?
I have a giant screen on my right here, and it's got 3 different games on it, and then I have the TV behind it with VCU still playing. That's how slow my stream is. I'm waiting for Miami, Ohio to come on. Yeah.
Well, just Rocco, the first Thursday of the tournament started.
Yeah. I better catch up quick here.
It is interesting we didn't really talk much about Virginia at all during this whole discussion because they do have some really good metrics at this point as far as resume metrics go. It just, in my opinion, probably speaks to how little those top-end wins really move the needle that we didn't spend any time talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were 16th in the reveal, and I don't think they've really done anything since then, have they? I should probably know that.
Anything what they did was they confirmed that they can't play against Duke, and Duke's a really, really good team, but other teams have played against Duke at the top of the bracket. They may not have won the game, but they at least made the games competitive. Virginia was never competitive in that game.
Duke will do that to you sometimes. All right. So we got these votes in. I will update here. LSU, Purdue, quick math, Texas Tech, and Nebraska joining this group. So I will update that. And we'll do another round of voting on Florida, Houston, Illinois, Iowa State, Michigan State, Nebraska, Purdue, and Texas Tech. Holy Big Ten teams.
So who has their Miami, Ohio 40-0 tattoo?
Well, 37-0, please.
D1, yes.
Is the voting open?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to revisit any of these teams that we quickly introduced, I mean, almost an hour ago at this point, but I've got them over here. I'll rearrange these. Where are we at?
You know, one thing, just while we're getting this ready, I think will be interesting to see how the committee handles it. And this is, of course, if this situation unfolds. You know, I think
that's why all these people stayed for their spring break, right? It's to come
Spring
watch
break.
you guys leave.
Uh-oh.
Travis Steele was getting fired up there.
But you know, what does the committee do if Florida wins at Kentucky and then rolls through and wins the SEC tournament as well? Even if Connecticut wins the Big East, I mean, it's going to be a close call, I would think, simply because while Connecticut has that one advantage and has had an exceptional season, even though this year's SEC is not last year's SEC, it's certainly stronger than the Big East. So I think if that unfolds, I think it'll be very interesting. I think if Connecticut were to fall in the conference tournament and Florida were to run the table, I think it becomes a much easier swap to make.
I think Michigan State's still in this thing. If they win in Ann Arbor, that changes their profile immensely. All of a sudden, Michigan State's got a real shot at it.
All right, if you're looking at the spreadsheet, those 8 teams on the shared spreadsheet, not the Google sheet that we're all in. I should get another word for it, but those 8 teams, their resumes are up there if we want to discuss any of them, or we can just go straight to a vote since we've already discussed all of them to at least some extent. Sounds like we're going straight to a vote.
Straight to a vote.
If anybody's got any questions out there you're watching, any of these top 16-ish teams, Kansas, Alabama, Gonzaga are also in this kind of tier, although we don't have them in this particular vote. They'll be coming up again momentarily.
What I think is really interesting about Illinois' profile is, in general, I don't think it strikes me as a 2 seed. But I think at Purdue and at Nebraska, those 2 wins by themselves, when you combine it with the predictive average, all of a sudden I think it all kind of starts to come into place. But looking at Illinois, a little bit of a weak 2 seed, not based on basketball talent. I think the team on the floor, good 2 seed. But the resume outside of that at Purdue and at Nebraska doesn't really hold up to what you would expect to see from a 2 seed.
No, I would agree, Graham. I think we're kind of back to that same discussion. Like at this moment in time, you could see Iowa State potentially still in front of them, but given the losses that they've had and to the points you made of how they've played recently, that's maybe a tougher sell. Yep. If you give some injury considerations for Illinois or not, and how much, I've given up ever trying to figure out how much for one team it matters and somebody else it doesn't sometimes. And then just to the point you said about Purdue not looking as well as they have recently, Nebraska, Texas Tech, a week ago after they won it, I was ready to. I had them moved up to number 8 because I thought, well, if the committee basically had them a whole seed line higher, and then they go and they win at Iowa State, Now they go and they lose that game, the other night at TCU. So depending on where you see them, their loss totals up there a little bit. I think sometimes you get to a spot where a team ends up simply by default at a point in time. And I think that's kind of where we're at with a couple of these. But to someone else's point, I don't remember who said it, so I apologize. But you get two or three Big Ten teams, they're bunched right next to each other. The Big Ten tournament, that Friday in particular and Saturday could be real easy to determine which of the order you put those in.
And we're all certain that the committee treats those Friday and Saturday day games equal to all the others played throughout the course of the season, right?
Absolutely.
They've told us.
No, I don't think that's so, but I do think, though, if you're talking a situation where you have somebody's an 8 and somebody's a 9, and they are playing, and one wins a big game and one loses a big game, that's on a Friday or a Saturday afternoon. That's an easy swap to make without recalculating your whole bracket and swapping them, 3 seed lines. You're just saying, hey, they're both basically even in our eyes. Whoever finishes better gets this one, and whoever finishes worse gets that one.
The one that really
Except
got
safe for the Big 12 too, because you're gonna have Kansas or Texas Tech as the 3 seed, the other be the 4, and Iowa State will be the 5. So that could, because the 4 or 5 will be played Thursday morning, basically. So that could be a huge nod to who's higher on the seed list there as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that one could have some real impact. The one that has scarred me over the years was when Texas A&M and Kentucky played in the SEC championship game. And Kentucky was 17 overall, and Texas A&M was 16 overall. And Kentucky won the title game, and they didn't swap them, even though they were literally right next to each other on the seed list. That one just really stuck with me as, man, they're probably not going to move anything after these Thursday results.
All right. 2 questions, one from me and one from the chat. And Rocco, if you want to vote on those 8, and we'll get the next seed line set. But the question from the chat is Matt Doyle, last 3 seed Gonzaga or Nebraska, who you got? We'll decide that shortly. In theory, since Nebraska made it through on that last vote of the ranking those last 8, should be Nebraska, but maybe when we get down to really dissecting them, we'll end up with Gonzaga ahead of Nebraska. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on where they have Gonzaga and Nebraska, but piggybacking off of the conference tournament questions we just had, if you're one of these major conference teams, would you rather get a big win on November 12th or March 12th?
November 12th.
November 12th.
Okay.
Easy.
That's a piece of cake.
These games just don't matter for the big guys.
There's a chance they could, but they're guaranteed that it'll matter November 12th.
Exactly.
So yeah. Why even take the chance if you get the choice?
And to the point I mentioned about Iowa State earlier, kind of being a made man for that 23-point win against Purdue and West Lafayette, those are impressionable games too, right? Those are the ones that the committee, they form their opinion of you for the whole year based on those early games where they think you either did something really great or really bad. And have we forgotten about Michigan? Obviously they've gone out and done things, but the game that I think about when I think about Michigan the entire season is still them beating Gonzaga by 40. That's when I think I figured out who Michigan was that game.
All right, we've got our 2 seeds in place. It's Florida, Houston, Michigan State, and Illinois. No big surprises there.
Rocco, are you watching Arch Madness right now, Rocco?
Of course.
All right. I don't know where your stream is, but did that guy just lose a tooth on the floor?
I think I'm up to speed. Do you have 3 minutes and 11 seconds left?
Yeah, they just showed what looked like someone's tooth lying on the court.
I saw a guy playing with his mouthpiece. So I assume it's the same situation.
Yeah, it looks like he got popped and lost a tooth. That's crazy.
Welcome to Arch Madness, baby.
Yeah, that is Arch Madness.
No pain, no gain.
9 seed over a 1, and guy that needs some new dental work now.
Oh, we gotta get Valpo to the championship game. My grandma went there. And I know Dave loves Valpo, right, Dave? Maybe not.
I guess he's always
I went to
cruising.
Butler. I'm not sure when we used to play Valpo. I think they
I
were
know. I thought you guys
back
always
in
used to
what was
pull
it, the
for
back old Midwestern Collegiate Conference days?
Yeah, I thought you guys used to pull for each other, like, if you're not playing each other, but maybe more hatred.
I want to say back in the old Midwest, believe it or not, back in the day, Dayton and Xavier were part of the Midwestern Collegiate Conference.
Great conference. Awesome conference.
Evansville was in there.
Yeah, with the t-shirt jerseys.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, let's discuss this next group of 8 teams. We'll come back to voting on the 3 seeds in a little bit. I want to make sure we don't want to include any of these teams in that conversation. I don't think we do, but we also probably should mention them. What is Graham even sending notes here? You could just say words, dude.
I didn't want to. I knew you were going to get into your spiel, so I didn't want to interrupt you. So I tried to do a chat on the side. Louisiana Tech used to have the shirts too.
That is incredibly
Yeah, they did.
that is incredibly respectful.
Quit being an asshole, Graham. All right, we're on to Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisville, North Carolina, St. John's, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Wisconsin. Those are just in alphabetical order, not necessarily our seed order, but we will start. Rocco, kick us off with the Razorbacks of Arkansas.
Well, I think the first thing that jumps out is outside of the game against Kentucky, they've been absolute buzzsaws at Bud Walton Arena. Just almost a completely different team when they're at home. Besides, again, that one Kentucky game, they were off and they lost by 8, but destroyed everybody else for the most part at home this year. But unfortunately, that's a big part of their story because they don't have a road win still against a team above the cut line, and that is alarming. They get one last chance tomorrow at Missouri, so we'll see if Arkansas can button up that part of their gaping hole in their resume. They do have a big time win over Texas Tech on in that was in Newark, New Jersey, I believe. Wild location for a game between two Southwest teams, but they get the job done there. That obviously matters. 6 wins against the field in total. Don't love the quad one record at last check, 5-8. So they're going to finish under 500 by the time the committee meets in quad one. They're also 5-7 away from Bud Walton, which is why I started the entire presentation with Bud Walton Arena because they've been completely different teams in road games. They've been completely pounded. They got pounded in the swamp by like a lot of teams do last time out on Saturday. Actually, they just played Texas. I apologize. But yeah, with their last road game, they got beat up pretty good at Florida. So yeah, obviously a very talented team. Darius Acuff goes for 49 at Alabama. They still lose the game. I think the one thing Arkansas has going for them when you compare them to Vandy, Tennessee, and Bama, where they're right next to on the seed list for the last couple of weeks, is if you just look at the head-to-head in those 4 teams, they lose the one at Alabama in double OT. Could have gone either way. Still an impressive performance, one of their better road performances, honestly. And then they just completely crushed Tennessee and Vandy. So if you want to really drill into those head-to-head matchups, Arkansas, I think, wins the battle of the 4. But again, they don't have quite the resume Alabama has on the road, and that's hurting them.
All right, I'm up next with the Kentucky Wildcats. We will also start at Bud Walton Arena, where Kentucky got its best win of the season.
Yes.
They are 19-11. They faced the number 5 strength of schedule, so they are basically in Auburn that didn't screw up too much. They swept Tennessee. They won at Arkansas. They split with Vanderbilt. I think it's worth noting that this, arguably third best neutral site win over St. John's. They had 3 of their 4 leading scorers were Jalen Lowe, Jaden Quaintance, and Cam Williams. Those players are no longer on the roster. I mean, I guess technically on the roster, but they're injured. They're not going to be playing again this season. So I think that they might get docked a little bit for that. I don't know how much it'll matter. I think they've proven since, some of those roster issues, what they've been since mid-January. They're pretty solid. They have 11 losses. All of them are to projected tournament teams, though. So nothing, even that home loss to Missouri, which appears in Quad 2B, Missouri's most likely going to be in the dance. So nothing too much to ding them for. Top 30 across the board in the metrics. So stick in the bluegrass state. Graham, you've got Louisville.
Yeah, the Cardinals have an interesting profile. If you look at their predictive average, it's 14th in the country, really stands out as a very positive thing. But then you look a little bit deeper into the profile, you see they're 0-8 against quad 1A. So very similar to last year when they're playing those toughest games on their schedule, they've really struggled. And what makes their resume still acceptable is the fact that they're 5-0 against quad 2. So they seem to set their level that they're really good at beating the teams that they should beat, really bad at beating the toughest teams on their schedule. Looking a little bit deeper into Louisville's resume, they have 4 wins against the potential field. They're no losses outside of quad 1, winning records against quads 1 and quad 2. Their top 5 wins, WOB-wise, are Cincinnati neutral, Indiana neutral, at Cal, at Wake, and Baylor on a neutral court. So, looking at those wins up there, that's what we would probably consider it to be. But per WOB, those are their top 5 wins. They have no road wins against tournament teams, and UK at home. Kentucky at home is their only win at this time against a team that we are considering for a top 6 seed in our field.
It's not great. I hate Louisville's resume. We'll get into them a little bit more shortly. I have the North Carolina Tar Heels, who got way more interesting about 5 hours ago. They are 24-6 overall. They beat Duke. They won at Virginia. They won at Kentucky. They beat Kansas at home. They had Caleb Wilson for all 4 of those games. Result metrics suggest that they should be a 4 seed. Predictive metrics all season long have had them in like the 25 to 30 range, screaming that this should be a 7 seed. Kind of an inverse Louisville in that regard, because they actually have picked up some quality wins and they haven't lost to any bad games. They are 5-1 without Caleb Wilson. They won at home against Louisville, Clemson, and Virginia Tech among those games, but I don't think they've proven much. I think this game tomorrow against Duke is going to carry way more weight than it probably should, because this is our first time really grappling with the fact that their star player is not going to be back. And this doesn't really have anything to do with their resume, but I tweeted about this earlier. It is interesting that North Carolina is pretty much singularly responsible for the fact that the ACC is an 8-bid league and not a 5-bid league. If they win at SMU, SMU's out. If they win at NC State, NC State's probably out. If they win at Miami, and they've also won at NC State and SMU, all of a sudden Miami has 1 fewer great win and 2 less valuable great wins. And we wouldn't be talking about Cal or Stanford if North Carolina hadn't lost those games. So they are feeling very generous with their ACC brethren this season. Anthony, you are up with St. John's.
The Johnnies. Well, it is interesting that we are kind of in this seed range here for the Johnnies, because they are pretty much tailor-made for it. I mean, if you look at their metric profile, at least every single metric, all 6 of them have them between 18 and 21. So they are the perfect fit for this spot. The challenge for them staying in this range is that they really haven't beaten anybody all that much of consequence, unfortunately. And that kind of goes back to my UConn discussion and how poor the Big East has been this year. That certainly hasn't helped St. John's either. They missed a lot of opportunities in the non-con. They lost the game at home at MSG to Alabama. They lost to Iowa State in Vegas. They lost to Auburn in Vegas, although I suppose that game maybe doesn't mean as much anymore. 3-5 against tournament level competition, but that is a home win over UConn, a home win over Villanova, and a road win at Villanova. And depending on how you feel about Villanova, which I think we get some mixed opinions on that one, we'll talk about them a little bit more later. That's not all that impressive of a profile from a win standpoint for a team, arguing themselves for a 5 seed against the teams around them this year. And a lot of these teams, as we said, have really elite resumes. So it's an interesting team to watch too, just because, they are very physical. They bully you up front. They've been really rough on the guard play. They've started to come around a little bit better, but they're a horrible three-point shooting team. Dylan Darling has played a little bit better of late, so that's been actually really useful for them and added quite a bit more dimension. But 24-6, 24-6 overall. I mean, they won a lot. It's interesting because most of their wins have come in quad two. They're 10-0 in quad two, which is pretty impressive. And I think that note will still strike a chord with the committee. It's just a matter of, does it strike a chord in the 5 seed range, or is it, push them back a little bit? Because overall they still have a 2-5 quad one record, but you have to, they're still positive quad 1-2. It's just a really fascinating argument for probably all of the Big East teams. Well, there's only 2 outside of UConn, I guess, but for both of them, it'll be an interesting argument of where they fall. Q3 lost to Providence at MSG, not awful, but not great. And overall, they played a really tough schedule. I mentioned they missed on all those games earlier. They also did play Ole Miss and Baylor. In fairness to them, that non-conference strength of schedule actually could have been quite a bit higher had those teams probably ended up where we thought they would be this year. And I think we've played that game with some other teams. I think you could actually play that game with St. John's a little bit too, where they could potentially have maybe closer to a top 30 schedule, non-conference at least. So good team, fits kind of right in this area, but how much do we weigh the fact that they really haven't done a whole lot against, compared to their peers that they're going up against?
Every time I look at St. John's resume, I think I'm looking at a St. Mary's resume. Like, how is a Big East team 19-1 against quads 2 and 3? It's a weird situation that we're in. Anyway,
Yep.
Dave, you are up with the Tennessee Volunteers, and you are muted.
Let me fix the mute problem first. So Tennessee has been kind of hard for me to get a grasp on and off all year, simply because at some points they look really, really good, i.e. beating Houston. I think, grant, that was early, but the win at Alabama, going into Vanderbilt and winning there, winning a road game at Georgia. Georgia has not been an easy place to just walk in and win. But then you find, they had both games against Kentucky, if I'm remembering correctly. They could easily have won both of those games. They lost them both. They lost a game at Missouri, which, again, Missouri is going to probably be a tournament team. And then the game at Syracuse. So they've just been a little bit up and down. It seems like on one hand, they look like they could be a 4 seed. And then you turn around and go, well, maybe they're more of that 5 to 6 seed. So I think that's kind of where I've been with Tennessee. And if you look at the numbers, it kind of says that, right? I mean, their predictives are a little higher than their resume average. So kind of ends up, if you divvy that up with their net, it's kind of right around that 5 seed mark is probably where they're going to end up. 5-8 against quad one, nothing really bad, but you just wish, had they won one of those Kentucky games or held on to both of those, then all of a sudden Tennessee's resume, we're probably talking about them easily on the 4 seed line. That's kind of the thing I get with Tennessee. Sometimes they look like a high 4 seed, low 3 seed, and other times they look like a 7 seed. So that's about what I can say on Tennessee, and I think their profile matches that. It's been a bit uneven, would be the way I would say it.
All right, Graham, stick in the SEC. Give us the Vanderbilt Commodores, who you just threw all sorts of shade at like 20 minutes ago.
First off, just thank you, Alan. Appreciate it on the Venmo over there. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has, well, you kind of got my general impression of the profile based on the way that I spoke about them earlier. But when it comes to Vandy, an interesting profile, because their predictive metrics tell you that this team is theoretically one of the best in the country. They're right around 15th in most of the efficiency metrics. You look at the quality wins, they beat St. Mary's out of conference, beat Alabama, won at Auburn, beat Kentucky, won at UCF. Sounds pretty good when you first think about it. But then you dig in a little bit deeper, it gets a little bit more concerning. The score was 47-46, dead heat against Alabama when LeBaron Philon checked out in that game in Nashville. Obviously, Vanderbilt took advantage, won the game, but it was a close game regardless, and they seemed to benefit from LeBaron Philon going out. At Auburn is their highest value WAB win of the season. It's worth more in the WAB than St. Mary's in Alabama. And if Auburn, who is a team that we're struggling to get into the field, is your best win of the year per WAB, maybe there's an issue with beating top teams. They're 2-4 against Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. So I look at this Vanderbilt team and I think better metrics than profile.
That is fair. I don't know. You mentioned I was trying to get my quad box set up and my YouTube TV's all messed up, but Aiden Sherrill was also out for that game, the entire game that Vanderbilt won at home against Alabama, when everybody all of a sudden fell in love with them. That was interesting. Dave, bring us home on the Badgers of Wisconsin. You're muted again, Dave.
I'm sorry, I'm fighting a cold, so I'm trying not to sniffle all over everybody. Anyway, Wisconsin, bit of a tale of two seasons, for the Badgers. When you go back to their non-conference, best wins are Providence and Marquette. They did lose, an early game to BYU. They lost an overtime game to Villanova. They lost a neutral court game to TCU. And certainly none of those are bad losses. Their metrics right now sort of suggest a team that's maybe more, on that 7 line, a little higher on the predictives. Their net's sort of uneven. But I think what really gets interesting about Wisconsin is, if we go back to what the committee has talked about, or we have talked about a little bit, is the value of big wins. And basically what you have with Wisconsin is, how do you deal with a team that potentially has 6 wins against the field, but the real big 3, of course, are that win at Michigan, the overtime win at Illinois, and then, just pummeling Michigan State at home. So when you average it all together, if the big wins win out, Wisconsin could be, maybe as high as that 6 line somewhere, just depending on who's going to be fighting them for that spot. That's really the story. They didn't have a great start to the season. They've been up a little bit down, but when they've been good, they've been really, really good. And they have three really huge wins to show for it.
Yeah. I mean, if we're comparing top 3 wins across the board here, I mean, I guess Tennessee's are close to comparable, not quite there, but like they beat the hell out of Vanderbilt's top 3. They destroy St. John's top 3. Louisville, LOL, not even close. So yeah, if this committee is obsessed with top 3 wins, Wisconsin might be like a 5 seed. But I hear you. You look at the whole thing, and it looks like more of a 7 seed. I kind of feel like I've been overinflating Wisconsin for that reason, just because they got those statement wins. But anyway, opening up the floor to all 8 of these teams. Anybody who wants to comment, question, or what did I say before? Yell nonsense or whatever. Let's get into this group, and then we'll do a couple more rounds of voting, and then we'll introduce our final 6 teams who we haven't discussed yet.
I'll just say I don't think Louisville belongs with these other teams. I just don't. I look at the wins, and it's not even a comparison. I can't see it.
And then going back to what Anthony said earlier, who are we putting above Louisville? Because that's been my problem with the card. Like I would love to drop them down to like 29.
Anybody, Carrie. Can we get anybody above?
At least they have a few wins over tournament bound teams. Like I feel like that has created a buffer between Louisville and Villanova for me, like possibly a 2 full seed line buffer between them. Now, granted, they were all at home or neutral. They haven't done anything impressive on the road. That's why they're 0-8 against Quad 1A. But man, the metrics are so good. It's hard to quit them.
I wanted to bring up something about Arkansas real quick. I know Rocco was mentioning the Bud Walton effect earlier, which has been certainly in full force. One thing I really struggle with Arkansas, they have not beaten a tournament team on the road this year. They did play tough in East Lansing, but they're four true road wins: Ole Miss, Miss State, LSU, and Oklahoma. None of those teams are going to be, well, I guess maybe Oklahoma's within sniffing distance of the field, but they're not. None of those teams are going to be in the field, nor particularly close. And I will be a little worried about Arkansas in that regard if they lose at Mizzou this weekend, because they will have fully struck out against tournament competition on the road. I know they have that Texas Tech neutral win, which is still, very, very good and provides some buffer there. But if the committee really wants to hammer them for true road performance, they absolutely can. And obviously, win percentage against the elite teams, they've struggled a bit too. But I mean, they don't look particularly good on the road either, as Rocco alluded to. They didn't look good against Georgia. They did not. They obviously looked pretty good against Alabama. They just couldn't get a stop. But got hammered in Gainesville. I don't know, something about their profile, and they also lost a huge to Auburn. Really, that part really bothers me, and I'm curious if the committee will focus on that a little bit and getting, especially digging into, like we said, with the SEC kind of stacked there, with Tennessee and Kentucky and Vandy all there. It's an easy one to pick out against Arkansas and say, man, they just did not take it. They really just were home merchants for the most part in building up their resume. So obviously they have Mizzou this weekend, and we don't know what's going to happen there. But if that game doesn't go in their favor, I'll be a little concerned about that.
Yeah, even when I compare them to, we didn't talk a ton about Virginia in the last round, but I see what Virginia did on the road against pretty good teams. And then I look at what Arkansas has done on the road against similar caliber teams. And even if Arkansas were to win at Missouri, as long as Virginia takes care of Virginia Tech, I still see a bit of a line there. Virginia did more away from home. And even to the point of the Texas Tech game, yeah, that was a neutral court win, but that's one. Other than that, they really haven't done anything, even on a neutral court. So for me, I just have a really hard time putting Arkansas higher than somewhere high up on the 5 line.
And I forgot to mention too, Darius Acuff's out this weekend, so that's not certainly doesn't bode well for their chances at Mizzou.
I don't know if I saw he's doubtful. Did they upgrade that to out?
I just saw, or maybe it was unlikely to play. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Seems like he'll be out.
I know. Yeah, they're already locked into top 3 on the SEC tournament. I think they're just resting his ankle. But to Graham's point, I mean, yeah, I had Virginia and I knocked them. Right, they are 4-1 against Quad 1A. They're questionable wins. They're not upper echelon, but talking 4-1 against Quad 1A. That's kind of ridiculous, even if it is just road games against the likes of NC State and SMU. Whereas Arkansas is 2-7 in that tier, and I think if that's where you've been with Virginia at 16 and Arkansas at 17, which is around where I've been as well, like that is a hard, barrier for entry for the Razorbacks to get above the Cavaliers with that, what you've done against the Quad 1A of the world.
I just want to say one thing on Kentucky real fast before we go to the vote. I think the Wildcats have maybe the best chance out of the group that's in this group to move up if they beat Florida tomorrow. It gives them 4 Quad 1A wins, which would be the most out of any of this group. Sans North Carolina, but that's a different story now with Caleb Wilson. That's a huge game for Kentucky tomorrow. I think they have a chance to really move up 4, 5, 6 spots on the seed list if they can get that taken care of.
Yeah, that would be massive. I mean, their resume average would probably go from like 29 to 21 or something with even a home win over Florida. That'd be pretty huge. All right, any other commentary on these 8 teams? Did I even update the spreadsheet? I don't even know. I'm slacking. Yeah, I've got them in there. All right. If anybody wants to vote on those 8 and then figure out what of that group joins what for the next vote. So the top 4 from this will join Gonzaga, Kansas, Alabama, and Virginia. And then the top 4 of that will join Iowa State, Nebraska, Purdue, and Texas Tech. Let me check the chat. Do we have anything? Joe Piazza 3756, who I'm fairly certain is a Tennessee fan and is mad at Dave for how poorly he represented the Volunteers, but he mentions Tennessee's 5-5 in Quad 1A. Yes, I see that. All top 30 away, out of conference or neutral wins. Only one Quad 2 loss. Crazy predictives. Resume average not really too much lower, but predictives much higher. I don't follow that sentence. Got another one that just came in. Jack Newcomer, Kentucky fan here, assuming a close loss to Florida tomorrow. So you're not a very loyal Kentucky fan if you're just assuming a close loss. Jeez, man. Does Kentucky stay on the 6th line? I wonder if Louisville loses at Miami, even if Miami jumped up, Louisville would still drop below Kentucky given no Quad 1 wins. Yeah, I mean, we'll see where we land on Kentucky. I don't think a loss to Florida, even at home, would, cause us to scrub them down or anything on Sunday. I think they would just be, that's like a fully just an opportunity situation for Kentucky, more a chance to potentially drop. I mean, it would be their 12th loss, and no other team in this range has 10. So maybe that just comes up. But as I mentioned with Kentucky, none of their losses are to teams that we expect to miss the tournament. So, as I briefly said when mentioning Kentucky, I feel like they're Auburn, but without the 3 screw ups. So they did what they were supposed to do against, the 5th best schedule in the country. All right, I got to go to my votes if anybody wants to
Makes me
add
feel any
anything.
better. I have Tennessee at 17. I've had them there for a long time on my seed list, one spot behind Virginia.
Yeah, I've had them there too, Dave. I noticed that. That's been actually one of the trickier ones for me in recent weeks is the Tennessee Arkansas comparison. I've had Tennessee ahead, I think, for the most part, but I've seen that flip too quite a bit as well.
Well, to me, it's Tennessee has been much better on the road. I mean, that to me is the differentiator between those two. Like I said, there have been times I keep finding ways to try to get Tennessee to the 4 line because of that, just for what the gentleman pointed out in the chat. I mean, they have a lot of really good wins. There's just been a little bit up and down. Every once in a while, you get kind of like, one of these things. But that's a lot of teams. So
I think for me, the concern is not the profile for Tennessee. It's Nate Ament. I want to see Nate Ament back on the floor before I feel confident with where I'm placing Tennessee. I actually ended up voting them higher in our vote here than I have them currently seated. And I think part of that's kind of a wait and see on, is he going to be healthy? And then how do they perform against Vanderbilt without him, if they're playing without him? Because they did kind of fold a little bit down the stretch against Alabama. That was one that I thought they had locked up, and they ended up losing that one. I think that was a complete profile changer for both teams. Had Tennessee been able to hold on to that, I would have felt like they're a top 4 seed contender as opposed to, maybe being a 5 seed.
Graham, I also put Tennessee higher here than I feel like I've had them on my seed list. So I don't know, maybe Dave did them justice with his intro, and we fell a little bit more in love with them. Or we're just looking for anyone to put in place of North Carolina, which is kind of what I did. Although you still have North Carolina at the top of yours, Graham.
Yeah, well, I think for Carolina, it's a bit of a wait and see. I want to see how they perform against Duke tomorrow. If they look the way I think they're going to look, they're going to drop like a rock. If they don't, then I was already prepared to move them up to a 4 seed anyways.
All right. The votes are in, and it's not even close. Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt will be joining the previous holdovers. So I will put those in the list. So we will move to a vote on Arkansas, Gonzaga, Kansas, Alabama. I've given up on going alphabetically. North Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Virginia. I will get their profiles situated on the list here. And then the top 4 from this vote will then join Iowa State, Nebraska, Purdue, and Texas Tech to determine our 3 seeds. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. I feel like we're voting too many times. I don't know.
Seems like we're pretty
All
close to on track to me, for what it's worth.
We're on track. I just feel like something, because we're, again, in the interest of full disclosure, we, instead of just having everybody send in their alphabetized list of teams they want to consider, like we kind of made a consensus seed list, and that's the order in which we're introducing teams. So instead of ever doing a thing where we're like, let's pick these 32 teams, I just keep taking the top 8 from what's left on the board and throwing them in. So I think we're kind of skipping something there, and then that's causing us to double vote in a way, but I think it's fine. We're getting there in the end.
Yes.
All right. So it's Arkansas, Gonzaga. All right. Y'all are already voting, so I'm not even going to bother fixing the spreadsheet here.
Well, part of the procedure for the committee is to do all these votes over and over again. And what I find interesting every year we do this process is my votes will change on teams, even from vote to vote. Even if we haven't discussed them any further, I just start to think about them a little bit differently. And you just mentioned North Carolina, and all of a sudden I just noticed I dropped them in this vote, and it was just more of a gut feel thing. Actually, they probably are going to get just absolutely blown out of the water against Duke tomorrow, and they're not going to have him moving forward. And like my head came in prepared to be like, no, I'm sticking with North Carolina until they prove otherwise. And now my gut is telling me vote the other way.
It's always tough to know which part of your body you should vote with.
I generally do the fingers, the opposable thumbs, I think help a lot with the voting process.
All right, we got anything in the chat? I know I'm delinquent in getting my votes in. Kentucky fan said it's been a roller coaster season. No kidding. At least, oh boy, forgetting the coach's name. Why am I only thinking of Calipari? Pope. At least Pope didn't do anything to himself in a bathtub like he suggested he was thinking about. Alex from Florida, are you guys concerned about North Carolina's predictives for the 5 line? Arkansas, St. John's, Tennessee, Vandy, all higher. Yeah, I brought that up a little bit with North Carolina, that they're kind of like an inverse Louisville, where the predictives have been low on them all season long. I didn't go and look at it as in depth as Graham did the other night with like Virginia Tech's close win over Elon that just like screwed up everything all season long. Maybe I know North Carolina had a kind of close game against Navy early in the season. Maybe they've just never been able to recover from that. Or
Navy's
maybe it's
good.
just that it's just that they played god awful defense in those losses to SMU, Cal, and Stanford, and then have never been able to recover from that. But I do constantly have to like kind of go down my seed list to find North Carolina and then bring them up because of their metrics.
How good could they be, Rocco? They're the midshipmen. I think when I'm looking at North Carolina, it's actually not the predictive metrics that concern me at all. It's the predictive side of things. I am worried that without Caleb Wilson, they're not going to perform well. It's not the actual predictives that worry me. It's the idea of what this team is going to be without Caleb Wilson. I know we've seen them recently. They've played pretty well. But now that it's sunk in that this is final, mentally, I think that's a real deal.
Yeah. All right. We're ready for another vote in just a minute. It will be Gonzaga, Kansas, Alabama, and Virginia joining Iowa State. Nebraska. Where am I at here? Come on. Don't do me wrong here, Google Sheets. Nebraska, Purdue, and Texas Tech. There we go. Again, I've given up on alphabetical order, but all right. So right now we're voting on the 3 seeds. It is Iowa State, Nebraska, Purdue, Texas Tech, Alabama, Gonzaga, Kansas, and Virginia. Do we want to briefly revisit any of these teams? I think the Nebraska versus Gonzaga conversation is probably worth a quick mention, since that's probably about our cut line.
I mean, for me, when I look at those two, what really separates it out is just the fact that Nebraska both have played weaker schedules than most of the teams on here. Let's just cut to the chase in that regard. But what Nebraska has done in comparison is put together a much nicer WOB against that. So, is that end all be all? No, but for two teams that have played kind of weaker schedules for this group, it's something.
I mean, how much of that WOB gap is literally just that loss to Portland? I mean, it is a full WOB. Like every game, they lost whatever 0.9 instead of gaining 0.04 for that game. So
I think my thing with Nebraska and Gonzaga, I do think if Gonzaga wins the WCC tournament, uh, Nebraska's going to have to do something pretty solid to get back ahead. I think overall Nebraska's resume probably sneaks them ahead right now, but I'm not sure if that will hold if Gonzaga can just run right through the WCC tournament. They'll pick up, I guess, at least one pretty strong win on a neutral court in the final. Rocco, who would they play in the semis? Would they get
Beavers, Dons, Cougs, or Pilots?
so most likely you're only going to get one there. I mean, maybe I guess San
Yeah.
Francisco. San Francisco is the best possible outcome there, and that's still
Which
not
isn't good. Yeah.
not as great as it's been in recent years.
Unfortunately.
But a WCC title, Nebraska. I don't know. I think Nebraska, like I said, if they're around the cut line, it'll be very easy to pick them apart for the non-conference strength of schedule. And Gonzaga is that kind of metric darling. We said that we thought they were going to be at 12th on our reveal. They are kind of perfectly fit for that. They get a lot of respect from the committee for being the Zags and doing what they do. I think they would be still a really good fit, especially if they win the conference tournament for that spot.
Yeah. The other thing is they have the co-championship, and if they get the WCC championship, tournament-wise, they will have a little bit of an extra lever on the team sheet for that as well, assuming Nebraska is just a straight at-large, non-Big Ten champion of any kind.
And I think I posited in terms of Gonzaga back during the top 16 reveal that I feel like their non-conference strength of schedule ended up not looking very good, but like who would have known that, right? Maryland is going to be 135th on KenPom. That home game against Creighton should have counted for more than it does. Even the games against Kentucky and UCLA that do appear here as top 4 wins aren't as good as they were supposed to be. Like, I feel like Gonzaga was a victim of circumstance in that regard, but that they just ended up not getting great wins.
Yeah, Arizona State on the road too.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that'll
All right.
age well after the Sun Devils go to Hilton.
On the Nebraska Gonzaga point, Nebraska ends the season at home against Iowa on Sunday. I don't think that will be, I don't think that will be part of our scrub. I believe that's like a 4:30 Eastern tip-off, and we're going to start at 2 Eastern. So it is what it is. We're doing what we can with the data that we have, and one data point we have is that Miami, Ohio is up by 7, so that's good. Although UCF is about to polish off its season sweep on the wrong end against West Virginia after doing the same against Oklahoma State. I'm starting to worry about the Knights big time. But
I would
that's
like
not a
to
3 seed conversation.
Seton Hall's up by 2 early against St. John's.
And one of the favorites actually won in the Valley. It took 2 overtimes, but Bradley.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Guys, are we rooting for chaos or clarity? That's what I need to know. Where is our rooting interests this evening?
For me, I'm a clarity kind of guy.
You're a clarity guy, Dave?
I'm old,
Okay.
I'm old, so
I definitely want Miami, Ohio to win. I don't care what
Yeah,
else happens.
no chaos there,
I'm
but
with you
chaos
on
elsewhere.
that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Chaos everywhere else is fine with me.
I actually want Miami to lose because I think it's way more fascinating.
All right. Noted Red Hawks hater, Graham Doran.
Yeah, I just think if they have 2 losses, that's the real call to me because I'm putting them in for sure. If they go in with only 1 loss in the MAC tournament, this one, I think it's one of the more fascinating bubble cases we've had in a long time, if that's what the case is.
I still think there's a pretty interesting argument if they win tonight and lose to UMass in the first round of the MAC tournament. I think that also, loss to Akron is one thing, but a loss to pretty much any other team there will be pretty interesting too.
I think they're going to play Buffalo now.
Oh, they're not going to get UMass anymore?
I'm going to double check it right now. Buffalo lost tonight. Central Michigan lost also, so they're out. UMass had a bye, so that makes it easy. Yeah. You're right. The Buffalo has the tiebreaker, so UMass will be
Okay.
the
I thought I
8.
had, yeah, I thought I had seen that somewhere that it was going to be UMass.
Yeah, good call. UMass and Buffalo will play Akron. And it looks like
Akron's
as long as results
Akron's
hold.
on the warpath right now.
As long as
Seek and
results,
destroy.
if results hold now, if Ohio wins, yeah, it's still the same there. But Ohio can get up to the 5. Right now, there are 6 if they lose.
Joe Piazza in the chat says it's just a Q1 road loss for UCF. This just really helps West Virginia. I don't know that I agree with that. I think UCF has really, I mean, they're running out of toes to stub down the stretch here. They're running out of beds to poop in as well, but
I just worry that for
they're in
UCF, I
trouble.
worry how I feel like it's so much easier. And I know the resume side is likely what's going to get them in, and that those numbers are still pretty good. But it is very easy to really look at those predictives the closer they get to the cut line and be like, man, this team is not maybe what we think they are in terms of the other side of things. I don't know. I'm getting a little worried about them too. I'll be interested to see where their resume numbers are tomorrow, especially if they lose. I'll have to see who they're playing round 1.
That's what I was going to say. So this gets really interesting. Cincinnati's playing absolutely fantastic basketball, and TCU just upset Texas Tech. What scenario does that create? If Cincinnati now goes to TCU and wins, both of those teams have enough wins to get a bye in the Big 12 tournament, pushing UCF to the very first round against Utah, the absolute worst team you could play in the Big 12 tournament. UCF, Utah, first round, a loss that would almost certainly, in my mind, take UCF out of the field. Pretty much the only team in the Big 12 tournament, I think, that could for sure, I won't say for sure, but very likely, in my opinion, if they lose that game, 4 losses to end the year against non-tournament teams in a row, one of them on a neutral court to Utah, that's just brutal.
But also, even if they win that game, then they are presumably playing Cincinnati or
Arizona.
TCU.
They're
So
playing
they
West
get
Virginia.
Cincinnati.
Or West Virginia, one of those
West
three.
Virginia. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. West
And a
Virginia would
loss
be the
there
8.
again doesn't do you much. I mean,
Yeah.
if you only beat Utah and you lose again in the second round, that's not really much. I mean, it's better than losing to Utah certainly, but that's not a great result either.
Yeah, so right now, just so you guys know, it looks like West Virginia will be the 8, and then the winner of TCU Cincinnati is the 6, and the loser is the 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Where's BYU going to be then?
They're the 10.
They're the 10.
Oh
Okay.
God.
This is assuming, what does this have here? BYU. This has them losing tomorrow. I'll put in a BYU win.
Yeah,
But they're still the
BYU
10. Because they lost to UCF, so they're still the 10.
Well, it will be interesting to see how this, because statistics from year to year give you a perspective, but it's never absolute. But I don't believe any team last year that had a WAB better than like 42 or 43 got left out.
Top 40, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I'd seen someplace that was 42, 40, but either way. But
Yeah.
that's where you think, like to somebody's point, like right now, UCF is still at 33. Now, if they lose tonight, that and another game, it may not end up there by the time they get to Friday next week. Could be pushing.
It was the top 40 of the WAB last year all ended up as top 40 overall seeds. I don't know where the cut line was on who got in and who was left out, but I know the top 40 was all top 40.
Yeah, all I remember is top 40 from that, and nobody above 49.
Yeah. Rocco, you and I both need to vote on these this list for the 3 seeds. I've been looking at 27 different things. Even though I said earlier that like you have to have Purdue right behind Iowa State lockstep. Anthony, I'm with you. I think Purdue is ahead of Iowa State at this point.
I just literally can't move Purdue down. I don't know how. I run into a wall every time and I want to do it, but I just can't do it.
See, I don't know. I see it very differently. When I look at those top Purdue wins, they stand out to me in a negative way compared to all these other teams. I'm looking at Iowa State won at Purdue, beat Houston. Nebraska won at Illinois, beat Michigan State. Texas Tech won at Arizona, beat Duke. And then I see at Nebraska and at Alabama. I'm like, yeah, very tough games. But you beat teams that are not top 10 caliber teams. Where is your top 10 win? It just sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And is that fair? No, because in WAB terms, winning at Nebraska and at Alabama are excellent wins. But to me, there's just something about beating one of the top teams in the country, and they haven't done it.
I think of the argument I struggle with that, Graham, is I tend to lean on the fact that, and again, those teams may not be as flashy as beating Houston and Kansas, but winning a game on the road against still a very solid team like Wisconsin or Iowa, yes, it may not be as good as beating Houston at home, but road win, I just, with how difficult it is to win in this sport on the road, I think the committee has often emphasized that. And that's the one thing I worry about with Iowa State is they're picking up a lot of their best wins at Hilton. And I think that does not tarnish those wins, but I think it does diminish the value of them a little bit. Obviously, they have the Purdue win is gold. I mean, it's what Rocco says times 10. It's the best nugget of gold you could possibly have in the fact that they blew them out. But then I start to look at beyond that, and they're doing most of their damage at Hilton. That's where I struggle a little bit with ISU.
Voting notes, we have Iowa State, Purdue, Texas Tech, and Nebraska in order as our 3 seed line. And I will preemptively note that is 2 Big 12 teams and 2 Big 10 teams, which means we cannot have Connecticut and Florida in the same region, or we'll end up with running into a problem down the line, because if you have Michigan and Houston together, you have nobody that you can put there on the 3 seed line. But that'll be a Sunday problem. Maybe we'll have Gonzaga ahead of Nebraska by then. Who knows? Adding the 4 holdovers from the previous vote back into the spreadsheet. So we'll do one more vote here on 4 seeds after I update the spreadsheet. And if anybody wants to After we vote on the 4 seeds, we'll reintroduce these 6 remaining teams who I optimistically said we would be talking about an hour ago. BYU, Clemson, Georgia, Miami, Florida, St. Mary's, and Villanova. Those are the only 6 teams we haven't particularly discussed yet in our mock committee. But it'll be, what did I even put in there? Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt are joining this next vote, and then we'll figure things out from there. So Alabama, Arkansas, Gonzaga, Kansas, Kentucky is not in this. North Carolina is. Who else we got? Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Okay. So it is those 8 teams that are now on the shared screen. Feel free to vote on them if you want, or we can discuss any of them. It is official. UCF got pummeled by West Virginia. That is a 15-point loss. Cardinal Dave Bracketology says in the chat, using Torvik's WOB, a loss tonight would put UCF's WOB at 40th. Ooh, right there on that cut line in theory. Says he has them as a 10 seed now. That sounds about right. Joe Piazza asks if we can add UCLA to that group with Clemson and company. We discussed UCLA last night. We're trying to not, we'll bring in certain teams for sure, but we're just reintroducing anybody we haven't already discussed. UCLA is pretty close to that mix. They might be in on that vote, but we're not going to rediscuss their whole resume as we did with these teams thus far tonight. Anybody else?
Yeah, just looking at this whole group, I think Vanderbilt and Arkansas to me stand out as not really having those top wins that you would expect to see. I look at what Alabama's done. I look at what Kansas has done, Tennessee. I mean, those are the sorts of wins you're looking to see. So just having this view of Tennessee really is it's doing a lot of credit to their profile. When you see them compared to some of these other teams, makes you put a lot more faith in the Volunteers profile than I personally was doing beforehand. I was so focused on the Nate Ament injury. Now that I'm seeing them like this, that a win over Vanderbilt tomorrow, I think, could cure a lot of ills in my mind.
I mean, I will counter what you're saying by pointing out that they have by far the worst WOB of anybody in this group, which is like the only thing saving Virginia in this conversation. Like I would happily put Virginia at 8th among these teams, and then they would be theoretically at 20th overall. But I keep struggling to scrub them any further down because it's such a clean resume. They've got a strong wins above bubble, which we know the committee's going to be obsessed with this year. Like if I just hid that row, I'd feel a lot better about hating on the Cavaliers. But seeing it there, I want them like at 2nd in this vote. But yes, Graham, just looking at the wins, if we're fixating on the top 3 wins, that's pretty doggone good for Tennessee. Even at Syracuse wasn't a terrible loss.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to your point, I think actually looking at the raw data helps instead of just a metric average. I know a lot of bracketologists only look at metric averages. They don't look at anything else, but seeing it like this.
I only look at jersey colors. That's all I care about.
But seeing it like this, I really do feel like of this 8-team group, Alabama, Kansas, and Virginia kind of have to be among the top 4, I feel, just because that WOB is so strong in comparison to the rest of the teams.
Yeah. I think if you just put these teams in order by WAB, but then gave Tennessee a little bit of extra credit and maybe bumped them up a couple spots, I think that's a pretty solid ballot. Am I the only one that hasn't voted? No. Rocco hasn't voted either, so I feel better.
There we go. Yeah, I think I just think in this part of the bracket, it's still more about the strength of your resume, what you've done at the top, and then obviously you got to weigh the bad. So Virginia's benefit is they don't have any bad really, but they still haven't proven they're going to go out and beat a top 16 team. So, you know, they're Nebraska light right now, and if Nebraska loses at home to Iowa, them and Nebraska are pretty close to the same. So. I think it's just all about who you play and how you did more than decimal points. If they're within the same range, then I think you're really going to drill into how they got here. But that's just me personally. I'd put the metrics at the very bottom of the sheet and use them as only a way to check your work, not as a way to introduce anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you if we're not talking about a difference between 2 wins above bubble. That's a pretty big difference because as Kerry,
Yeah, it gives them a high floor for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's a full win is the difference between the win part and the loss part combined. So like that's a big difference.
Yeah, and so much of that is because they have so few losses, right? It's an accumulation tool. So you're not going backwards ever if you're never losing.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so simple to track. But it doesn't really mean a whole lot beyond that, you know. Not playing Clemson probably helps, things like that.
To Anthony's point earlier, it's really hard to win on the road.
It's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do.
Texas, that's tough. And they almost got that Virginia Tech game too. That went triple overtime. So they're very close to having a big win there too.
I think it's something like, and again, this is probably last year, the year before's data, but I would almost be willing to bet that it's similar this year. Something around 27% of quad one wins are road wins. It's very rare. A lot of them are high-end home wins or neutral court wins. It's very difficult to accumulate quad one road games, road wins. So
which is
they
wild
stand
because
out.
even
No,
they're
I mean, I
it's
completely
75 teams. There's more of them. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I completely concur, but I think it's somewhere within that analysis. Like, for example, we were just talking about, I mean, Tennessee winning at Alabama and at Vanderbilt and at Missouri sure sounds a whole lot better than SMU and NC State. I mean, they're not really on the same level, you know. I mean, so yes, they have a cleaner, but they're also their schedule was not nearly as the same night in and night
Right.
out as for Virginia. So, you know, they're also getting a lot of games where they don't have to play great. And they did lose to a Butler team who's, quite frankly, not very good.
And I mean, and the non-conference was 200 spots apart for those two. I mean, it is a dramatic difference.
This is where we get into this every year between trying to figure out what we think the committee's going to do because of that WAB number and whatever. Just like in the reveal, we thought they're probably going to put Virginia there, and voila, there they were.
You know, something that really I thought was interesting in relation to our conversation from last night about how the teams that go to the West Coast come back, it's really when they come back to the East Coast that they tend to struggle. I saw another one speaking about that kind of grind of really playing these top schedules. Every team that's gone out to play Arizona and has then gone to play Arizona State afterwards has lost. Every one of them. They've all lost because they just played a physical Arizona team. They just had their main course in Tucson, and now you're trying to get up for Arizona State. Like that really fascinated me, and I think it speaks to Virginia. A benefit of their schedule has been at Louisville, at NC State. Those are the top games on the schedule. Those are the ones they're getting up for. If you're a Tennessee, you can't get up for games like that quite the same way. If you were in Alabama, same deal. A Kansas, those teams are playing a rugged schedule, and they're getting caught with trap games against teams that can bite you. Virginia's really not getting that the same way. And I think it is worth a conversation and a recognition there.
Yeah, West Virginia was the lucky one. They got to play the Sun Devils first, so they got their win in Tempe.
All right. I am back from my Guinness and bathroom break. It was fun having my earbuds in there while I was doing my business, just listening to you guys. We have our votes completed, and it is going to be Gonzaga, Kansas, Alabama, and Virginia by more of a margin than I thought it would be, but not surprising. They were 16 in the reveal, and though they lost to Duke, they haven't particularly done any damage to themselves. But now this is where it starts to get interesting, because now we don't have the committee's guidance to hold our hands. We have to go rogue. So we will introduce those 6 teams. We'll get them pulled up here momentarily.
Are you saying our opinions matter now, Kerry?
Oh yeah, now they matter more than ever. All right, so we're going BYU, Clemson, Georgia, Miami, St. Mary's, and Villanova. I think I'm the only one that doesn't have a team to cover in this group, so I'm gonna kick up my heels and listen to you guys. Rocco, take us away with the BYU Cougars. Uh-oh, Rocco went on mute. We'll skip Rocco for now. Graham, are you ready with Clemson?
Yeah, Clemson Tigers. Let's talk about them. They are just 1-5 in their last 6 games, but the win was a quad 1 game against Louisville. They do have a quad 3 loss. When you look at that, or was a quad 3 loss, just moved into quad 2. It was red hot Florida State, though, and I think that is something worth mentioning. It's, you look at the bottom half of quad 2, barely in quad 2, and think it's a bad loss. I don't think it's a bad loss from a qualitative standpoint. Florida State's just been playing some really good basketball down the stretch. They did lose at home to NC State, which is problematic, especially if those two somehow end up close to each other on the seed list. Neutral out of conference, they beat Georgia and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's looking a lot better now. When you look at their best wins, I think you could make a really good argument that their 2 best wins are Louisville and Miami. And if that's the case, they were both at home. Look at Georgia, look at Cincinnati, look at Stanford. Are those really moving the needle quite the same way that we would expect a team in this range to move it? I don't know. I think a little bit of a weak list of wins for Clemson. Although you look at their predictive metrics, their resume metrics, they try to tell you this team's probably about an 8 or a 9 seed. So in this range, maybe a little light on the wins.
Unmute. There we go. Matt, you got the Georgia Bulldogs.
I do. A resume average of 29, predictive 32, so not bad there. Just 1 win in the quad 1A. It was at Kentucky. Pretty substantial win at the time, 5-7 versus quad 1. Now, here's the interesting part, though, guys. Their non-conference leaves a lot to be desired. SOS of 235. They did beat Cincinnati on a neutral floor, but get this. They played 6 of their wins in the non-conference were against teams 230 or higher in the net. So they really feasted on some bottom feeders there. They lost to Clemson in a neutral court game. They beat Xavier by 1 on a neutral floor game. So you take away the Kentucky win, and there's not a whole lot there for Georgia to be considered any higher, I think, than maybe that 8-9 game. They did beat Texas at home. They beat Alabama at home. But the big one, though, is at Kentucky. And they close with at Mississippi State tomorrow. Don't lose that one. That would be a pretty big ding on the resume.
Georgia's non-conference just made me so angry. Like in mid-November, I was angry at Georgia because they were like the middle of the pack type of Iowa State from a couple of years ago that was just beating the crap out of everybody because of their style of play. But anyway, they made up for it to some extent. They wouldn't have 7 quad 1 wins without it. Graham, back to the ACC, Miami, Florida. As Miami, Ohio is up by 9, by the way.
Well, we're comparing Clemson and Miami in this grouping, and I just talked about how Clemson lost at home to NC State. Well, guess who won at NC State? It was the Miami Hurricanes. Resume metric average is pretty good, 27.3. Predictive average, not quite as good over at 35. But I think what really stands out for me is Miami's 11-6 against the first two quads with no losses in Q3 and Q4, 24-6 overall. That really stands out in this range, especially because they have 2 wins over the potential field at NC State and at SMU. We just talked about how well Florida State's playing. They do have a road win there, as well as at Wake Forest. I think when you look at Miami, something to consider, they had a 9-point win against UNC. That UNC did have Caleb Wilson, so maybe a little bit more value than some of the other ones. I will mention Miami led that game from start to finish, never trailed against a fully healthy UNC.
I mean,
Wish you were talking
Caleb
about
did
Miami,
get hurt
Ohio.
during that game, but Rocco, you're back.
That's why I want to
Yes.
that they trailed at no point during the entire game, start to finish.
Yeah, no, it was like the JT Toppin injury. Like they were already down. He just wasn't bringing them back once he got hurt. Rocco, we got you on BYU if you're ready.
Yeah, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Richie Saunders portion of the show, because that is how the NCAA committee will be evaluating this team, in my belief. They are 1-4 since the sad news. You could maybe count the Colorado win because he did go down in the first minute, a game that they almost lost, which would have really blown this resume into the sun. They win that game in overtime, but then the games where they knew they were going to be without him and the ACL was confirmed. This has been a really poor defensive team, a team really missing one of their most important leaders, their most efficient floor spacer, and obviously elite shooter. And they've gone 1-4 thus far, with of course the game I think that set alarms off across bracketology when they were down by it seemed like 40 to UCF. Maybe it was close to 40 in the Marriott Center of all places as well, a place where they typically are just unbelievable. They did have home losses earlier with Saunders to Arizona and Houston. That's one thing, but to be down like that to UCF is a whole nother ballgame. They've also lost at West Virginia fairly convincingly and very convincingly got pounded at Cincinnati in their most recent result. They finished the season tomorrow against Texas Tech in the Marriott Center. Really important game to try to improve some of the impressions they gave. I think we all know in basketball when you have to adjust to a lot of different lineup combinations that are new on the fly, it might take 5 to 6 games to really start figuring things out. We've seen that in other cases where teams took injuries earlier in the season. So there's still hope for BYU to try to get right. But man, they're running out of time. And I think when you look at the body of work for what that's worth, throughout the year they were neutral court heroes, knocking off Clemson, Miami, Wisconsin, and Villanova. All very good wins for the resume, all with Saunders. And for the most part, getting 6 quad one wins, even though they have a losing record in quad one, and getting to 9-7 away from home in total, thanks to that neutral court hero status they have. They're clearly going to be in the field. It's just how big of a seed hit does the Saunders impact make, especially since they've, for the most part, I should have mentioned the Iowa State win. That was the one positive. Played very well that night. It was right after we last met, before the bracket preview. But after that, it's a declining ship, and a lot of it's been defensive issues with this team.
Yeah, they really are neutral court heroes. I like that you call them that. All 4 of those wins have aged pretty nicely.
Pretty nicely, yeah.
Yeah.
Miami wasn't
and
in for a while back when they beat them, so
yeah.
they had to work
And
their
that
way up.
was maybe the worst team in the country who could have lost like one of their big 3. Like they were just that big 3. I mean, Kebakate is awesome, but he's not a scorer. Like
Yeah,
they
rim
needed
protector.
Rob Wright, DeBonsa, and Saunders, and they've just been a mess since then.
Mhm.
Anthony, you ready with Villanova? And then we'll come back to Rocco on St. Mary's after that.
All right, so we go from the Richie Saunders portion of the show back to the Big East portion of the show, which is a recurring theme of solid enough resume, and then when you actually start peeling the layers back, there is just a complete lack of meat. And Villanova is the ultimate culprit here. I've had this discussion with Graham a little bit too in the past few days. But so Villanova's done a lot of winning. They're 23-7. That's the good part. They're still 10-6 quad one, quad two, which is actually a fairly good quad one, quad two split for as we get a little deeper into the field. 8-0 on that quad two line though is doing the bulk of that heavy lifting, and that is again a theme that we saw with St. John's, where the bulk of these Big East teams are just throwing up quad two and high end quad three games this season. Home high end quad three on the home side, quad two on the road side, and it works in Villanova's favor from a quad split standpoint. I think that's really the argument for them is truly a quad split and metric argument. Uh, but this team has done very, very little against the upper echelon teams, and it's pretty painfully obvious at this point. One other thing I want to mention with Nova too, they're very good on the road. They've been 9-3 away from Finneran and Wells Fargo. Well, it's not Wells Fargo anymore, but you know what I mean. 8 of those are in quad two and quad three, though. 7 are actually quad two, which is pretty impressive. So again, there's a good side to that, but there's also a pretty bad side to that where I think caps their ceiling and they sort of run into a hard wall. And the main reason being this team is 1-6 against the NCAA, the projected field at least, as we will most likely have it. And they got swept by the two real cream of the crop teams in the league, the only other projected tournament teams at this point. So that's swept by UConn, swept by St. John's. They just lost by 32 to St. John's, which was a really ugly result. And they're 0-5 against Quad 1A. Resume average is still 24, though. They're 22 in WAB and they're 35 predictive average. So that's the tricky part with Nova. It truly is kind of this clean resume on one side, at least against the mediocre and kind of the middle of the pack teams. And then you have this, hey, real tournament level competition, they kind of stink. But they're still solo third in a P5 league, even though it's the worst P5 league this year by a fair margin. One other thing to mention, which somebody will probably bring up if I forget, is they don't have Matt Hodge for the rest of the season. In theory, when you look at his stat lines, if you didn't watch Villanova play, you'd probably be like, why does that even matter? He's only averaging 9 points. This team is extremely thin in the front court, and now you are requiring Duke Brennan to do a lot of, well, he was doing a lot of heavy lifting to begin with, but now he's doing a lot more of the heavy lifting in the front court. Is a really guard-heavy lineup for Nova that will work. But if Duke Brennan's in foul trouble, that's a real problem for this team. So we'll see. We'll kind of see how this pans out. I think they're 1-0 without Mount Hodge, so with a road win at DePaul. So that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. But we got a couple games left to see if there's any real, at least optic impact from that. I think that's all I got for Nova.
Don't you love that DePaul is 8-11 in Big East play? Does anything define the state of the Big East more than that? I mean,
it's really interesting though, because the bottom of the league is better, but the middle of the league has gotten worse. And they've kind of consolidated themselves into like this pseudo bottom, but the teams that were really bad kind of picked it up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there aren't any quad 4 games in the Big East this year. Usually there's a couple on every team's schedule, but Rocco is dealing with making some dinner. I guess that's a West Coast thing. It's 10:30 here. I'm thinking snacks, but do we want to talk about? We'll throw Iowa and St. Louis in this as well. We don't need to do a full reintroduction of them, but they were the next teams that we got voted in last night. Well, actually, it was St. Louis and UC. I did us the courtesy of dropping them out of this conversation preemptively. Oh, Rocco's back. We can touch on St. Mary's, and then we'll get a little bit on Iowa and St. Louis.
Apologies, guys. West Coast time zone. It's dinner time out here. But St. Mary's, happy to be aligned with them for several off seasons now with their scheduling philosophy. I think the knock on them bracketology wise most of the year was not getting the high end win. They certainly do all they can to try to produce those. Getting into the battle for Atlantis was a big deal. Unfortunately, they just got completely outplayed in the championship game against Vanderbilt. That was their big opportunity in non-conference, and lose by 25, obviously a big miss there. But during that tournament, they were able to beat Virginia Tech by 11. That was, I think, somewhat helpful, especially since Virginia Tech's still in play for a bid. Beating Santa Clara at home, and of course, ending the season with the Gonzaga win. Those were the last two games of the season, playing their best basketball right now, which is not unfamiliar. You've seen this movie before with Randy Bennett, unbelievable coach. And he has a younger roster than usual this year, and he's got a lot of those younger guys finally playing his style. He's different than most coaches because a lot of coaches will go and try to put a roster together that fit each other. That's not how it works at St. Mary's. How it works is you got to fit Randy's system, or you don't play. And these guys are learning, and they're huge. You know, a couple mountains in the middle. Andrew McKeever is a monster. Harry Wessels is a monster. And I think the other thing I think it's important to call out is they'll pick 8 opponents a year to play home games against that are supposed to be some of the better mid majors this year. Was Northern Iowa, St. Thomas, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Arkansas State. They go to Davidson on the road, and they beat all of them. So that all paid off for 10. And plus, you mix in some WCC games, 10 quadrant 3 wins, 8 quadrant 2 wins. And eventually, and this is where a tool like the WOB can help a school like this that doesn't get to play primetime games every week. Those games add up for a little bit more than just your traditional quad 4, silly, big paycheck games. They make all their paycheck games count at St. Mary's, and you look at them now; they're 26-4 against Division One. They're co-champions of the West Coast Conference, and now they've got a couple wins finally, clearly above, or at least one win clearly above the cut line, and in against a top 16 team in Gonzaga by double digits, and no bad losses.
Yeah, I like your point about the WOB, that they do kind of, if you just look at quad 1 record, like so many amateur bracketologists do, St. Mary's has no business in this conversation, but all the metrics, including WOB, maybe we should have had them in the previous conversation. I think they're probably closer to a 6 seed than a 7 seed, but that's about the cut line. Any commentary on any of those 6 teams we just discussed, or Iowa or St. Louis, who we will be introducing to this vote?
Not really. I would just say, I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds weird to say, but VCU winning tonight and continuing to do well actually helps St. Louis
Yeah,
a bit.
sure does.
I was going to talk about Villanova just for a minute. This is a resume to me that just lacks any kind of punch whatsoever. They're kind of hanging their hat on that neutral floor win over Wisconsin. Otherwise, there's nothing here really to see for me. And they've been lower than most bracketologists. For me, than most bracketologists. I believe this is a bit high to have them, honestly. And again, Wisconsin, they tried to schedule somewhat a non-conference 62, but it's basically one win's holding this thing together.
Yeah. I mean, you just look there at the road wins. They haven't really beaten anybody on the road. I mean, they're not traveling in a VW bug. They're not a punch buggy. They don't punch back. Really problematic for Villanova in that you mentioned it, no punch. I just don't see anything on that profile that gets me excited. I personally have them as an 8 seed in my own bracket, and I think that's more appropriate for what they've done. I don't see them as a 6 seed caliber team at all.
Just to be fair, what we're
Yeah,
talking
and I think-
here, we have four lines seeded. We have Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt in holding. They are our theoretical 5 seeds. And we also have Kentucky, Louisville, St. John's, and Wisconsin kind of in holding. So there are 6 seeds. So right now we're talking like 7, 8 seeds.
Yeah.
Well, when
And
these move for the 4 to join those back 4 eventually for a vote?
The top of, when we vote on these 8, the top 4 will join that Kentucky Louisville group, and then the winner of that vote will join the Arkansas and North Carolina group.
Yeah.
But
So I guess for me,
this is theoretically 25 through 32 right
Okay.
now.
I just have a question. When Villanova was presented, did you guys discuss the Matt Hodge injury?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to hurt as well going forward. Although they did blow out DePaul in their first game without him, so we don't know for sure.
We were just talking about that, Rocco, how it's hard to gauge right now with one game and it being DePaul. But they actually handled DePaul pretty well, and DePaul's been playing better basketball. But that's a really thin front court for Nova, so there's definitely a concern there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm also
if they run into St. John's in the Big East semifinal, Zuby Ejiofor might go for like
they're
30 and 25.
They'll lose by 70, I think. By the way, speaking of Duke Brennan, one of the more one of the more underhyped transfers this past offseason that I think worked out really, really well for Nova. There weren't a lot of people talking about that transfer.
Yeah, everybody was talking about Owen Freeman going to Creighton, and that was terrible. And then
definitely not
Bucknell guy that went to who's the Bucknell guy that went to Alabama? I can't even remember. He's been so irrelevant.
Owen Freeman might be the worst.
Noah Williamson.
Year.
Williamson, yeah, yep.
One thing that's interesting to me, just looking at this grouping, outside of the resume aspect of it, I don't really care what the predictives say. The three teams I wouldn't want to play here are Georgia, Miami, and St. Mary's, because I feel like they're all at the top of their game that they've been all year long. They're there now. And a lot of these other teams have just been fading down the stretch, and they're getting worse compared to what they were earlier in the year. Those teams seem better now, and I think their resumes are coming into shape.
Yeah, Miami would be a team for me that could ascend up the C list. With the wins they've had over the last 3 weeks or so, you're talking about wins against 3 projected tournament teams, and they win tomorrow, it'd be 4. Yeah, they're a team that's definitely ascending.
BYU is the happiest team in the world that last 12 games is no longer part of the official team sheets. All right, I will get the spreadsheet updated with these 8 momentarily, but I'm going to hit on the chat first. Cardinal Dave Bracketology. Villanova to me seems like a comparison to last year's Louisville. Graham, did you send this? You love talking about last year's Louisville. And I think they could get underseeded compared to most forecasts. I agree. They've done nothing to back up having 4 wins above bubble and a resume metrics average of 24. That is not the 24th best resume in the country. There's no chance in hell. Go ahead. You unmuted yourself. Go ahead, Graham.
Well, sorry. I didn't know you were talking to me. I thought Matt popped up on mine. I thought you were talking to him. But yeah, I mean, really, you just look at the wins. And as Rocco said, like I start out by I take a look at the metrics to try to sort teams into a general spot where I think I'm going to kind of look at them. And then I go from there and just really look at the resume itself. And every time I get to Villanova, I'm just like, yeah, I need to bump you down. You need to be further down compared to where I have you from the metric profile. And I just don't see any way that the committee will spend time with them and put them at a 6 seed. I've seen a lot of bracketologists have them as a 6 seed right now, and some of us might have them as a 6 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you guys have them there, but I don't see it. Every time I pull out the resume, I think this is a team that needs to be on the 7-8 range, maybe preferably the 8 range to me, because that profile just does not hold up in my eyes.
Yeah, I think the win against Wisconsin, which actually occurred in Milwaukee, basically a road game, the transitive properties within that gave Villanova quite a bit of weight. And they didn't even get the full weight they probably deserved because it was in Milwaukee, but they're still calling it a neutral court on the team sheet because Madison's a good hour and a half away. But with Wisconsin going and beating Michigan on the road and the other great wins that Wisconsin picked up, Villanova's benefiting from that. And that's where you get the egg roll that you're consuming.
Yeah, and that's always one of the whole challenges with all this, that the simple metrics and the number next to somebody's name doesn't tell the story. Perfect example, Wisconsin early in the year was not playing as well as Wisconsin right now. The other, you can, and the perfect example of that in the last 3 weeks is Cincinnati. beating Cincinnati back in November and December was, happening all the time. Now they're on the verge of beating a lot of people. So, that's where a number, it looks better now because their numbers improved. But you hope that somewhere in the context of some of this, when you get into the nitty gritty of it, is yes, we did beat them, but how were they playing at the time that we beat them as opposed to where they might be 3 months later? That's just one of the nuances that I don't know whether they get into it. I've never been in an actual committee room, but in the hours and the days that they have, you hope those kinds of things would potentially be a factor when it comes to seeding, maybe more than selection anyway.
Right. And that's how a lot of basketball seasons go. You learn more about your team, things start to come together, the lights turn on, or the lights turn off. It goes both directions.
To your point on what Wisconsin was at the time, I remember when that game was happening. I was over at our neighbor's house. I was like watching the game on my phone. I was like, oh, okay. So now Villanova's just barely in and Wisconsin's just barely out. Like those were bubble teams in mid-December. I don't know how many of you guys actually do bracketology in freaking December like my crazy ass does. But an interesting question here that I think is worth discussing because we were texting about it earlier today. How do you seed BYU? Because they can only be placed in the West or South regions. And, previewing where we are headed, if we have this 1 seed line, Arizona is definitely going to be in the West region, going to San Diego in the first round. That is a Friday, Sunday pod. Connecticut would theoretically be going to Philadelphia. Rocco brought up the possibility that they could go to Buffalo instead because that would help BYU if they need to get somewhere if they're an 8 or a 9 seed. But it's tough. BYU is the team that separates the seed listers from the bracketologists every single year. But if BYU, if this is what we have, right? If Arizona is the one out west and they're going to San Diego, and Connecticut does get Philadelphia, which is also a Friday Sunday pod.
Yeah.
If BYU is 29 overall, which is the top 8 seed, they would get scrubbed down to a 10 seed because they will not move BYU up just because it has restrictions. They will punish BYU, not punish somebody else.
Yeah, I think the city move would come before moving BYU that far down personally. And I'm remembering mainly because I went to Washington and it is so long ago you guys probably forgot, but they made the tournament at one point. And that was when Mike Hopkins was like brand new and
was
got
that
into
the year that the Pac-12 got an 11 seed and a 12 seed and that's it?
That was further back. That was further back in history, but this was 2019, and the Huskies were in an 8-9 game with Utah State with North Carolina as the one. Carolina had the local like Charlotte or whatever that they always have, and they put North Carolina. And North Carolina was third number one overall seed. It'd be like Arizona this year, and they put them in Columbus, Ohio, because they had the same situation: 4 sites of Friday, Sunday, and only really they for the playing game in Dayton, I think it was. They had to move Carolina to Columbus, and then the Dayton winner got to just go up the road to Columbus instead of go to North Carolina and do a Thursday Saturday situation. So if they did it for the Dayton thing, I think they would probably do it for the BYU thing. Especially UConn playing in Buffalo is still not bad compared to Philly. The UConn fans would still all go to Buffalo.
I know if it's the 4-1 seeds are all Friday, Sunday, they're fine with that. Like they'll just put the
Pick
Tuesday play-in game will go to Friday. It doesn't matter. But if they're all Thursday, Saturday, they'll have to screw over the fourth number 1 seed because you can't make a team play on Wednesday and then on Thursday.
Correct.
Joe Piazza noted BYU fell to a 14 with Iowa way back in 2012 when
Iona, not Iowa.
I misspoke. He spelled it correctly. I misspoke. But that BYU Iona game.
What a first 4 game that was. That was the crazy comeback.
one of the greatest of all time. Probably the greatest of all time.
I just a quick follow up on that. We're talking about locations. I'm assuming most of you guys saw the noticed that about the charter aircraft and all that complication. I was thinking about that and maybe more of a logistical thing when we get to the final bracket, especially for banner brackets. But I wonder how much that may impact where they send some of the teams that, especially outside of the protected seeds and where they start diverting teams. Will we see a little bit more of a regional flair to the pods than maybe we would otherwise, just because they're trying to prevent teams from having to go super far? I don't know. Just a thought on that. And did we discuss St. Louis? I'm sorry, I stepped away for a minute.
No, we didn't really mention them.
So I want
Have
to
at
ask
it.
a question on St. Louis. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I have to look back at the actual resume from a couple years ago. But this St. Louis resume is starting to remind me a little bit of 2022 Murray State and how it, at least from the quadrant split point of view and a metric point of view. Actually, St. Louis's metrics are better, at least as they stand now. And I'm curious if anybody has put any thought into that comparison and or I know the couple of recent slip ups, we've kind of been dropping St. Louis down the seed list, but I still have trouble with getting them so, too far down because they just have done a lot of winning. And I think it's still really impressive to go 27-3, just like we're talking about how impressive it is for Miami to go 30-0 or potentially 31-0. I'm going to knock on wood there. I don't want to jinx anything. Um, I still think it's versus the schedule that in the competition St. Louis played against 27-3, really not to mention probably should be 28-2, barring that insane closeout in the Stanford game. It's hard for me to imagine that they go much lower than a 7, but I'm curious if anybody's made that connection with the Murray State resume or if I'm just completely insane.
I just
Both are true.
yeah, it's weird. I was telling Carrie about this a couple weeks ago. I found a like notebook from 4 years ago or something like that. I think it was like 4 years ago, where I'd made a note to myself: stop underseeding mid majors, because I was so focused on the resume that I kept underseeding mid majors, and the committee kept putting mid majors higher than I was doing it. And I was like, this is what I keep screwing up. And so then I was like, all right, I'm gonna just again treat them just like, I'm gonna look at those metrics that seem to be a better indicator for them. I'm looking for the big wins. They don't have them, but apparently that's fine for the committee. And nowadays I'm like, the committee just apparently hates mid majors. So
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
then
what
Drake happened.
but I just went the total opposite direction. And now I'm like all aboard I see what you're seeing, but I'm also like the past couple years makes me think they're probably not going to want to put a team that high without better wins than VCU.
Yeah. I've been saying for the past week, like if Auburn and Miami, Ohio both get in, like historically the committee, when they don't know what to do, they'll throw them at a 9 seed. And I felt like for the longest time, historically, if the committee didn't know what to do with a mid-major, what seed line did they throw them on? A seed. I feel like Murray State was like Dayton and VCU were 7s all the time. And that's like I could not possibly have ended up with Drake as an 11 last year. I wanted to put them all the way up at a 7.
That Danny Hurley Rhode Island team was a 7 seed too. They get Oklahoma. It was like that was the committee's thing for a long time. They're like, good mid major always goes 7, and then we'll work from there.
Yep. That said, I kind of like St. Louis as a 7 seed right now.
I think when it comes to the locations question, the NCAA is responsible for a lot. They're responsible for the women's tournament. They're responsible for Division One, two, and three, both men and women. They're responsible for the NIT this year. So I think that travel concern, obviously, um, it might impact a little bit. I don't think it's going to impact the core rules of bracketing teams though, because when you get to the 5 seeds and go all the way to 16, you're going with in order closest to that school that you can place them without breaking any rules in terms of rematches and in terms of being within 75 miles of the site if they're 13 through 16 seeds. And I think in general, if they're going to try to make any tweaks on a scrub in the bracket, it's just going to be where can we possibly move a team around and maybe get them a little easier travel. But I think in general, as you go through the exercise, you're already doing that organically. And lastly, because there are so many events they have to run, There's nothing worth as much money as March Madness by any stretch of the imagination. This is like a $10 billion event. So get out of here with you can't do it. It's more just a bandwidth issue for them. They don't have enough people to book all the flights for them, and they're just trying to like get in front of some of that stuff. So maybe the actual committee this year for 14, 15, and 16 seeds will just try to get those teams bracketed quickly and make the travel arrangements faster, stuff like that. But it's not going to be anything that's going to screw us up, in my opinion.
Speaking of getting bracketed quickly, should we go ahead and vote on this?
Yeah, we've got these 8 teams are ready to be voted on. Graham filled his out probably 10 minutes ago. I don't know. Also, Anthony, you tweeted out that your Torvik update on UCF and West Virginia, like while you were talking about Villanova. Like, are you an AI tweeter? What the hell's going on, man?
Did I? I don't. I think I had it. I think I had it.
It was in the
earmarked.
chamber.
I think it was. I think I had it formulated. I just hadn't had the numbers updated, and they were quick plugins. But I was going to mention that UCF really giving back all the goodwill they got from that BYU win tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to UCF shortly. They'll be in the next group of 8 teams when it's time to reincorporate them. But yeah, another team that is very happy we no longer have the last 10, last 12 on the resume because they would get absolutely hammered. St. John's is up 6. Miami, Ohio is up 4. If you care about the San Diego State game, they're up 2. SEMO's up 1. All 4 games are going. This is beautiful. I looked up like a minute ago and all 4 freaking boxes were on a commercial break. I hate that.
USA 8-4 carry.
I'm sorry, what?
USA
Are they
8-4 over Brazil.
Brazil, yeah. I should probably pay attention to that as a Major League Baseball writer, but
Oh man, I was gonna say USA's losing to Georgia Southern 90-81.
Wait,
all right.
Georgia Southern's
that's
doing
a
it.
Rothstein.
Yeah,
that's
they
the
went on-
Rothstein account.
Oh, they're doing it. That's 3 in 3 days that they pull it off. They might.
Yeah, they're going to
might
day
really do
4,
this.
man. They just went on like a 24-4 run. They were down all game.
They'd be halfway there to the 6 in 6 days.
Yeah,
Wow.
they are. And they're gonna
Is
Wait,
play.
who is
USA
get
gonna
next?
win?
Who do they get next, Rocco, if they win?
They get Coastal Carolina. They could beat them for sure.
Somebody needs to tweet you if USA is going to win in 6 innings tonight. You should be like, we don't play Georgia Southern. They're going to beat them in 40 minutes.
They're gonna lose to Georgia Southern. They're gonna choke. Just watch.
All right, I got to vote. I'm sorry, Graham. I'm ruining your night.
Carrie's about an hour behind his own schedule.
More than that, man. We're at the vote till we drop portion of the schedule, and I'm ready. We got to get at least through 7 lines. I decided that. If we can go any further, awesome. But we'll collectively vote on when we stop voting. How is BYU's WOB still so good? Disgusts me.
I mean, look at those wins: Miami, Wisconsin, Villanova, Clemson, Iowa State. They look good if you didn't realize what's going on with BYU.
I keep forgetting that, like, I end up putting BYU like directly behind all 3 of those teams: Miami, Villanova, and Clemson. Then I'm like, wait, oops, they beat them all on a neutral court. I better scrub that back. So I'm going to fix that on my ballot. Not that it'll make any real difference.
I mean, I do think we're at the point where if Villanova could beat anybody, if Clemson had better wins, I would be moving them ahead of BYU because I feel that bad about the current BYU team. But Wisconsin's the only one I can get in front of them right now just because Wisconsin's the only one that's actually picked up really good wins.
I'm obviously the person that has a different feeling on Georgia than everybody else.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. And that's fine. I love it. I love that we're getting deviating opinions here. Graham's the highest on Miami, Florida here. Dave, you're the highest on Georgia. Like, please let us know what we're missing.
Well, I think for me, when I start getting here, I look for ways to to differentiate for me, and that's not the right way to do it. But I look at, I look at the wins that Georgia has versus Miami, and I just think the quality of the wins is better when you consider they won at Kentucky, they beat Arkansas, they beat Alabama. They do have that big win over Cincinnati that, again, it was not back in December, was not the same. They also have, another road win at Missouri. They beat Texas. They beat Auburn. The only thing really negative is that, overtime home loss to Ole Miss. But to me, those wins trump North Carolina State, SMU, North Carolina, and then a whole bunch of ACC teams that aren't going to make the tournament. Virginia Tech still could. And then those 2 losses to Cal and Florida State. They're close, but to me, the quality of those wins in the SEC bumps Georgia up. To me, I just value those wins a little bit more. I realize that 2 of Miami's are in 1A and only 1 of Georgia's is, but to me, sometimes those numbers don't tell the whole story.
Yeah, I think personally with Georgia, I just have such a hard time getting past that they did nothing. Like, they didn't even try in the non-conference, and I know they've made up for it with the big wins they've picked up in SEC play. It's kind of a less problematic version of what Texas was last year, where they just didn't play anybody. I mean, that Texas team went, that was the 6-12. I think Texas and Oklahoma were both 6-12, but they got the benefit of the doubt because it was the best SEC ever. Rocco, I know you're ready to just ream on the Texas decision, but I mean, at least Georgia has a winning record in the SEC. But yeah, I just have like a glass ceiling on Georgia in my mind, and I thought I was higher than them than most people.
Yeah, I mean, I moved them up to a 7 initially after the Alabama win. Miami overtook that spot with the win at SMU, but Georgia's my strongest 8, and that's mainly because they've been able, the win at Missouri, the win at Kentucky. Um, those are impressive compared to the teams they're being compared with. Again, this exercise is just comparing teams, and where they land is where they land. And with 5 wins against the field, with those 2 road wins, with strong enough numbers, 11-8 against the top 2 quads, winning records in top 2 quad road games and away from Athens is hard to find in this area, and they win a bunch of comparisons that way. Whether you want to compare them to Iowa or St. Louis or others in this area, I think Georgia's in a decent spot. I just don't like the quad 1 record personally, but it is what it is. The other things make up for it.
All right, so we ended up getting BYU, Georgia. I lost track. I moved some things around. But we are now excuse me. We are now going to vote on the 8 of BYU, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisville, Miami, Florida, St. Mary, St. John's, and Wisconsin. The top 4 of this will join Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt in our vote for the 5 seed line. I don't remember who was in that last vote, but I can tell you who got left out was Clemson, Iowa, St. Louis, and Villanova. So I believe it is these. No, Gonzaga, Kansas, they're already in. What am I doing here? All right, I think it's these 8 teams. Arkansas. Nope, too far, too early. These 8 teams. Minus Virginia. I'm all messed up now. Whatever. You guys are voting even without my spreadsheet. I appreciate it.
I am
we'll be picking. What was that?
I was just gonna say I'm impressed by your spreadsheet skills in general. You're moving around there pretty quick. So some credit, don't be too harsh on yourself.
I'm only 3 Guinnesses in here. All right, I got to vote.
Slacking. You're
Matt
slacking, Kerry.
Dixon, our boy Matt Dixon, Lobo Bracketology, said no defense being played between Miami and Ohio. That is absolutely true. They are on pace for like 115 points. It'll probably end on a buzzer beater. Joe Piazza, I feel really good right now about St. Mary's and BYU, then probably Miami and Georgia, UCLA and Villanova, clear, Clemson, Iowa, and St. Louis, in his opinion. All right, let me get my vote in.
If you don't like scoring, just turn on Illinois State, Northern Iowa. There is a ton of stops happening in that game.
It's a ton of stops.
Turkeys for all.
I think this is a big game for St. John's seating wise at Seton Hall. Is it an impressive win? I don't know. Maybe it's not impressive, but I do think it could very well be the difference between them landing a 5 seed and a 6 seed.
Well, particularly
you just can't take the loss. You can't take the loss. That's the key.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because you also know Seton Hall knows basically they have to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, you can still do enough in the Big East tournament to get a good look, but it's a home game for them tonight. It's one of those they want to make a serious run at it. They should try to win.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Our first tie. Let's break this tie, and then we'll go back to that. And I'm gonna guess it's gonna be a quick tiebreaker. I don't know, but Louisville and St. Mary's.
St. Mary's.
Gales.
St. Mary's.
I also say St. Mary's.
Well, I'm going to lose. I'd say Louisville, but
I would too. So I'm going to lose. That's fine.
All right, 4-2. St. Mary's passes. All right, whatever you guys were discussing, go back to it, and I will get this situated.
Shoot, what did we just say? We had something good going.
I don't know.
I totally lost it with that.
I blew it. I'm sorry.
We definitely had something good there. If anybody remembers, let me know.
Baby, you got a stew going.
Oh, what I was going to say, I actually had something good to say. I think it's good. You guys can tell me if I'm crazy. You can tell me if I'm crazy, and you always should. But I always thought if you can go back in somebody's season and figure out where it got derailed, and the team that derailed them, I think they should get like a token or something. You can't really put it in a metric, but how many tokens did you get for like ruining somebody's season? So like, say the problem is because with the bubble, it's a house of cards. In reality, if Seton Hall loses tonight and it derails them, and then they show up and lay an egg at the Big East tournament, by the time the committee sees the final team sheet, that win against Seton Hall is not going to look like what it was really today. And you could go back and cross-reference the rest of the season that way with any of the top 75 teams or top whatever you want to pick. And I think that's a big deal, because if you played a team with everything on the line and beat them, you should be remembered for being the team that ruined them. Because that's not easy to do. Playing them at their highest motivation.
is that a new metrical category?
The tokens. I want to give out tokens. It's like you can go play video games with them and get into the tournament.
Florida State would just have a bunch of tokens.
They wouldn't. It still wouldn't add up to enough. Could be a good way to break ties, like that. Who would have more tokens, St. Mary's or Louisville? Probably St. Mary's.
All right. So right now, I will actually update the spreadsheet this time. We have Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, not Louisville, St. John's. What are we missing from this group? Oh, St. Mary's joined. St. Mary's, St. John's, and Wisconsin. So it'll be these 8 teams right now that we're going to be voting on for the 5 seed line. That's 9 teams. Who do I have extra? No, that's 8.
Portland.
Oh,
There's 8. There's 8 there.
It's counting Virginia that somehow got stuck in the middle there.
Portland has eliminated Washington State. They are 2 wins away from Gonzaga.
There we go.
And that's it for Washington State in WCC history. Thanks for joining for 2 years.
2 years, yep.
This Miami and Ohio game is something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I look up, it's just a sprint.
First to 120 wins.
It's like 1980s NBA.
Loyola Marymount, baby.
That's right.
Like AAU ball in the summer.
Yeah.
I was like 6 years old when that Hank Gathers team played Loyola Marymount. I don't even know what I'm talking about, man.
The 3-point defense in this one's been something else.
My God, we got a ball game here. This is intense. The announcer on the Ohio game sounds like the same guy who does the Nathan hot dog eating contest. He's just all sorts of excited, man. Like he's screaming on every basket. It's incredible.
I don't even know who it is. The other night I was watching I think it was the Western Michigan Miami Ohio game, and Latulip was the
Oh yeah, I saw
color
that.
guy.
He did the interview at the end of the game. I saw that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Field of 68 shout out. There you go. Now you
He's a
can
nice
get
guy.
your paycheck from them. Oh, he seems great.
Yeah.
I will say whenever him and what's the Memphis guy? John Martin, whenever they're
John
on
Martin.
together, I'm like, I feel like it's the Spider-Man meme. They just look like the same person.
Harry, you voting, bud?
No, I'm not. Screw you. Yeah, I'll get on it.
Yeah, the Tulip's in a lot better shape than Martin. I can tell you that's the difference.
Tell you, Tom Izzo would be having a conniption fit watching the defense in this game.
Miami, Ohio was playing good deep for a couple of weeks. Now they're back to their old problems. Maybe the Skulljack thing ruined it.
I mean, everybody in this game has 4 fouls, basically, so that also makes it so much harder to play defense.
Ooh.
Mr. Skur says Miami's playing with all the swagger and that Arkansas is the strongest 5 seed ever.
Okay.
They probably are talent-wise. They probably are.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that recently. I think Arkansas is actually, of all the teams that may end up on the 5 line, they are the one I would least like to draw if I was a 4 seed.
Yeah, you just don't know where their head's going to be at in the tournament.
We have an SEC heavy 5 line here. It will be Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Vanderbilt. So we already know with certainty that it would be North Carolina and Alabama matched up because can't put any of the other ones together. So that'll be fun. I'd watch that game.
Carolina's going to lose to a 12.
That's fair.
If it's South Florida, they will. If it's somebody else, maybe not. High Point
it's not
could
going to
beat
be
them
Belmont.
too. High Point could beat them.
Give us Utah Valley. See what the WAC does to celebrate that one. They won't be at 12 though.
UIC over UNC.
They need 3 or 4 upsets to get up to a 12, I think.
I mean, we got one today. That's for sure.
Yes. But I think if Northern Iowa wins this Arch Madness tournament, I think they could get a 12. They got the injury thing going for them. When Tristan Smith's been healthy, they've been awesome.
Next voting sheet.
Man, this
Yeah.
announcer's
I'm
going
working on it.
crazy.
I'm working on it. You and Grammar in cahoots. I'm just trying to watch some basketball. So we've got enough holdovers that we'll just go back to. I mean, it's not really a back to. I don't know that they were ever together on a sheet, but BYU, Clemson, Georgia, Iowa, Louisville, Miami, Florida. We got to get Miami, Florida, and Miami, Ohio together on a vote somehow. St. Louis and Villanova. So that'll be our next 8 as I get that situated. So the top 4 from this vote will then join the holdovers from the previous one, which is Kentucky, St. Mary's, St. John's, and Wisconsin. Then we will do that to vote on the 6 seeds. And then I would like to get at least one more line in before we call it a night. If that's agreeable to everybody, I'll go as long as everybody else is up for it, but I won't make anybody stay up past 7 seeds. But I am going to watch the last 30 seconds of St. John's. Oh, that's not a foul.
Yeah, I will probably try to head out after we do the 7s. I've got something I got to do in the morning, so.
Oh yeah, you're doing like
I'm doing a
your own
local
mock
I'm
committee.
I'm hosting a local thing for some people here tomorrow at
Nice.
8 to noon. We're gonna do a whole bracket in 4 hours.
Wow, you're gonna be all hyped up.
You're going to need the rest of Saturday off.
Yeah. I've of course, we're gonna, because of the condensed time, unless somebody there really opposes, we're going to start with about 28 or 30 people in the field and go. It's more the experience of everything.
Yeah, that's
Because
awesome. Man.
I know eventually they're going to end up there anyway. So at some point we got to save time because we can't do it. I'm going to have a stop clock. All right, guys, we got to vote.
Bro, that's what I wanted to do for this. I thought about it. I was going to put like a 10-minute timer up and like everybody gets timeouts and a couple of challenges, but I didn't.
Speaking
I
of
didn't
which,
have the
let me
energy.
rock over the 2 that have not voted. Just throwing that out.
Why don't you pour yourself another drink, Graham?
There should be really a stop clock where you just have to vote. Speaking of which, you haven't voted, Gary.
Hey, Dave, I kind of do the same thing. So next Saturday, there's 8 of us that we do like we select the field on Saturday, and Sunday, like after we all go to church, we seed it and scrub it and have it out by 4 o'clock. I started a few years ago. And it was just something kind of fun to kind of emulate what the committee does. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. We really enjoy it, and it's hard to find people who pay that close of attention. But I'm lucky enough to have friends and family that do. So it's a blast.
Yeah, and I've done this like 3 or 4 times, but it's people that are like fans, but they don't get into it but they're kind of curious about how it works. So it gives them a little taste of, I've done it where it's been like a 7 to 8 hours. But for some people, they don't want to, I don't want to give up a whole Saturday, but I do a Saturday morning and I'm curious. So I've condensed it down and it works.
Yeah.
I love this idea that you've already perfected the model. You're like, no, this is, oh, you want this version? Yeah, I can get you the 3-hour model. No worries.
It's not ideal, but
We are all just
most of the time they don't follow it close enough to want to have 20-minute discussions on it. One team, they kind of want to look at it and have a little bit of discussion, and then we'll move on.
100
and again, it's really
100.
That was a heck of a pass.
This sounds. But I guess maybe it wouldn't matter one way or the other. If they lose tonight, but they win the MAC tournament, then they're definitely in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wow, what a game-winning shot from Miami. 102-100 final. Oh, am I ahead of you guys?
The fact that you called it a 2-pointer made me know it was not real.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe Graham still has just actually wired TV.
He has actual cable. Yeah, I can't wait until they bundle everything and then try to sell it to us as cable. All right, so we got Louisville, Miami, Florida, BYU, and Georgia will be joining the likes of.
Oh, hang on. I'm still finishing here.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
I had the wrong order. I had to go back and I'll be ready in 2 seconds.
All right.
I gotta move these guys, and these
I can
guys.
tell you Iowa is
We're
not
good.
passing on this.
I can tell you the question is there's 35.7 seconds. So how many shots can each team still get up?
At least 3 each. At least.
I do hope Miami, Ohio at least has the sense to run it down to 20 seconds on the game clock. So if they get an offensive rebound, they can run out the clock. That always drives me nuts. If you're not going to go 2 for 1, at least make sure that if you get the rebound, the other team doesn't get the ball.
Yeah.
I
don't think
they
they can't.
every time I see a team not go 2 for 1. I'm just like, why can I not do something about this? Why do I have to watch this?
Well, they better get a shot up within about 3 seconds then.
Oh, yeah, the
this
2
is
for 1's
brutal.
gone, but I think they're going to run it down to 20.
That'd be like
Oh, wow.
first good
Got a
shot you can get, man.
block shot.
Oh, they got it back. That hit the. Oh, we're going to a review. All right. We'll probably be able to get another whole freaking vote in.
I don't get behind by 2 seconds again. I'm actually changing TVs because I think this other TV might be a couple
Whose
seconds.
ball did they call that?
I think they said it was to Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, it looked pretty clear that it was off Ohio, but
That's definitely off Ohio. No
I don't
doubt.
know. The Ohio guys seemed very convinced immediately that it was going the other way. Which,
No, man, he touched that. I'd be absolutely shocked.
Yeah, it's Ohio.
yeah.
yeah,
That's insane that he immediately called for the review like that.
Coach, I didn't foul him.
Oh.
There is at the last second.
Oh,
Yeah. If
it
it's
there.
out, I think it's out off the bottom of the backboard, though, isn't it? In which case, it would be Miami's
Well,
ball.
maybe we're looking at a different review.
That still looked like a off Ohio, no?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the Miami guys coming from
No,
behind
see-
might have tipped
see-
it, but it looked like it hit his jersey on the way out.
It kind of looks like the ball changes direction at the last second, like it comes
So
off
he-
the Miami guy.
Ohio definitely tips it.
that's a
there.
good point, Graham.
Yeah,
Because-
I think.
I think that would be
rotation.
Miami ball.
Nathan's Hot Dogs here with Joey Chestnut.
Right there.
Kobayashi.
And they got to have enough evidence
The
to
Joey
overturn this,
Chestnut
though.
brackets, baby.
All right, so are we voting now on this group?
Oh, yeah, we've got a new group of 8. I've been diligent about updating our Google sheet, not so much the sheet that I've got shared to the world here, but Arkansas, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, North Carolina are passed. So it is now BYU, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisville, Miami, Florida, St. Mary's, St. John's, and Wisconsin. Looks like it's these 8 teams, right? It's those 8. Georgia, BYU, Kentucky. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, it's those 8 right there. Ignore Clemson.
Well, they give it back to Miami, huh?
Yep.
Does that graphic just say wow?
Yeah. I mean, those are some wow numbers, Gary.
It's fair. Come on, Suitor. Nope.
Oh, I thought he was
Uh-oh.
going to pull there.
That's either a foul or a travel.
Oh, it's got to be it. Did he not travel?
He tried to put the ball down, but
Oh, overtime, baby.
Can't believe I put the
Time.
volume on for that.
For overtime.
Yeah.
Miami, Ohio, season finale. Of course it's going to frickin' overtime. All right. Let me get my vote in before Graham drives over here and punches me in the head.
Well, that'd be more of a punch than Louisville's packed. So,
Oh, you know who also packs a punch? TCU. David Punch.
good one.
Hey. All right, I got my top vote in. What does that count for?
What I'm really interested in tomorrow is if Louisville goes and beats Miami, all of a sudden, a lot of the concerns I've had about their profile the whole year just pretty much disappear overnight. So, and if they don't,
I mean, they're definitely in that range. If they don't get a win at Miami, I could easily see them somewhere ended up along that potentially 7 to 8 line again, depending on what happens around them. Even though their metrics, it's their predictives are just so good. It's hard to know what the committee's going to do with it.
I mean, their predictives were pretty close to that last year too. I can't remember exactly where they were, but they weren't far off from 14.
So,
all right, Rocco, if you're good to vote here, I'm finishing mine up before. I can hear Graham's keys jingling.
My stream's so far behind. I'm finally seeing the final play right now because I have to cast it from my phone, so it's like a minute. It's like a full minute behind.
You're like on interstellar time zone, or what's going on here?
I'm casting from my Fubo app, and it's just delay. It's like double delayed to like a full minute. But I've got the stat broadcast now, so you guys aren't going to shice me anymore.
Rocco's at halftime.
Yeah, basically.
Welcome to the mock committee, brought to you by Fubo and Starlink.
Yes, perfect. All right, I'm in here now. We're golden.
I love how the chat has just become nothing but the Miami and Ohio game.
I mean, it's a pretty big moment here.
We're all just watching it together.
Beautiful.
All right, so whoever comes out of the bottom of this vote, we'll just throw them in with Iowa, St. Louis, Clemson, Villanova. That will get us 7 lines, as well as a holdover team for when we start on Sunday.
Okay, we're good.
We are good. No surprise that St. John's is at the top of the list, getting in. St. John's.
Is that the first time we've all agreed on something ever?
I mean, we were pretty solid on the 1 seed line.
That's true too.
All right, St. John's, Wisconsin, Louisville, and Kentucky sneak in. It was pretty close between all 3 of them. So now those will drop out, and we'll put in Iowa, Clemson, St. Louis, and that's not Wisconsin, it's Villanova. And let me clear everybody's votes before we start voting.
Right. Sad news. My Denver Pioneers are about to get knocked out. I love that team. Getting killed right now. For you Summit League lovers out there watching.
Who are they playing?
North Dakota. The Mountain Hawks.
Not even North Dakota State, huh?
No, that's the 1 seed. They were supposed to play them in the finals, Kerry. It's not going to happen.
I like the Tommies in that one.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Especially, they got South Dakota State out of the way. That's the team with the real home court advantage.
How did
the funny part about this is I'm not sure if it'll be where by the time we get to voting on Sunday, I don't know if the Iowa Nebraska game, is it late Sunday?
4:30 Eastern, is that right?
Yeah, I think all 3 of the Big Ten games will still be either ongoing or haven't even started yet.
Those
so
greedy primetime guys.
Yeah, we won't have the Michigan State game, unfortunately.
I'm gonna go ahead and predict Michigan wins that, and I think we go accordingly.
That's so bold of you, Graham. Way to go out on a limb.
Got 6 players with 4 fouls now in this game.
9 ties, 14 lead changes. Put up another WoW graphic. Come on.
Battle of the Bricks, baby. What a rivalry.
Oh, it was like a dodgeball catch.
Well, that shot looked good.
Man, Miami, Ohio gets so many good looks. They're just not all of them are falling. But they generate just really clean rhythm catch and shoot threes. Ohio's also 14 for 30 from 3 in this game. That'll keep you in the fight.
It's not bad, that's for sure.
You know who's out of the fight? Seton Hall. They're all done.
I feel like I've written them off like 8 times this year. Is this officially the last time?
Yeah, this is the official one where they actually.
Okay.
I've literally been pulling out the pen to get rid of them on my sheet.
They are definitely
First
SMU
of
from last year.
First of many bubble teams to choke this weekend. I'll predict.
Well, you know what the saying goes: more teams play their way out than in.
That's correct, Dave. I'm
Come
a
on,
big
make a
subscriber of
layup.
that. Big subscriber.
Be remiss not to mention big win for Chris Casey tonight.
Yeah, heck of a second half. It was tied at halftime.
He's
They
pseudo on the
dominated
hot
the
seat
second
too,
half.
I think.
What's that?
I feel like he's kind of been floated around as being pseudo on the hot seat. So that's
for
good
sure.
to see them. Good to see Fairfield win.
Mm-hmm. I actually went to that game on President's Day. No, whatever. Martin Luther King Day. I went to Mac triple header and I saw that exact game. St. Peter's at Fairfield, and St. Peter's won at Fairfield. So good revenge game here tonight. St. Peter's had a weird season, really weird season. This game is insane.
We are waiting on votes from Anthony and Rocco, and then I'm happy to just keep the stream going and we'll just watch this game until it ends, but we can be done voting for the night. The bottom 4 from this will carry over to Sunday afternoon for us.
Just as an FYI, CBS Sports Bracketology has the next 4 out, includes Oklahoma. Oklahoma's their 5th team out of the field right now.
I'm glad to hear the AI loves the Sooners.
Yeah, AI saw Oklahoma kept missing out on the field closely the past few years. Figured they'd probably be there again.
It's embarrassing.
It annoys me so much. Because they announced they were I don't know if it was announced, but it was leaked that Jerry Palm was out while I was at the Final Four, and I talked to a couple people from CBS about it, and even then they were like, "Yeah, we're probably just doing AI."
That's crazy.
I just even if it is accurate, the whole point is to have these conversations. That's what makes.
Oh, what a block! Wow.
If Palm was terrible, but also entertaining and could make his points, he'd still be at CBS. And even if though Lunardi, everybody's oh, he's 120 whatever on the bracket matrix. He's good at what he does. It's engaging all season long. You don't get that with freaking AI, CBS Sports.
Ooh.
Oof.
Tough foul.
They should have at least brought in Watson. Let that explain who the
3 different guys on Miami. 3 different guys on Miami, Ohio have technicals, and Woolfolk fouled out already.
Suter's got 4 too. If he's
Oh, he just fouled out. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to spoil that. I'm looking at
No,
the
no,
game
no. I'm
chat.
saying Suter's got 4 too, though, which I know he's not having a good game.
Yeah,
but
he had a
that
technical. Suter
could
had
be
a
a real
technical, and so did
problem.
Byers.
Ohio's got 3 more guys with 4 fouls, including
Yeah,
their
Connor's fouled out.
We're going to be playing
Ohio.
1-on-1 here by the time we get to the third overtime.
No doubt. This is nuts. Good thing they get like a week off for the MAC tournament after this. They wouldn't have been able to play on Sunday.
Oh, he missed it. Wow.
All right, our
Pavletsky,
final round of votes.
37 points.
Final round of votes is in. It'll be St. Mary's, Miami, Florida, BYU, and Villanova on the 7 line. I imagine we'll probably scrub BYU ahead of Miami, Florida on Sunday because of the head-to-head neutral result, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if it matters that much, but they are pretty close on resumes. Again, I'm happy to just keep the stream going. Whoever wants to stay around and watch the end of this MAC game, it's pretty sweet.
I'm gonna log off so that I can turn the volume up and watch the end of it without having somebody go "ooh" while I'm trying to watch the final.
Lame.
I'll see you guys on Sunday.
Bye,
Yep,
guys.
gentlemen.
Hi,
Thank you.
guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
See you
Appreciate it.
guys. Oh, everybody logged off. It's just you and me, Rocco. Oh, Rocco left too. All right, we'll end the stream. All right, thanks everybody for sticking with us. We went an hour or two longer than I planned on, but we got through 7 lines. We'll finish 8 through 11 on Sunday. We'll do some scrubbing. We'll do the bracketing, and then we'll have our final product. And hopefully the conference tournaments don't ruin too much of that for us. Enjoy the rest of this Maction. Take care. Enjoy the hoops.